Lieutenant General Gaster stood pale-faced, witnessing the devastation of his prized Magitank force. The battlefield was a nightmarish scene, with more destroyed tanks than intact ones, thanks to a monstrous wolf in human form. Defeat seemed inevitable, and they had already missed their chance to retreat and report back to General Caligulio. His mind raced with the dilemma of whether to request permission to withdraw, knowing it would likely be denied. The main force, led by Caligulio, was already engaged near the demon lord Rimuru's stronghold. The restructured armor corps, numbering 700,000 strong, was certain of victory, but news of their defeat could destabilize the entire operation. Compounding the situation, the Dwarven Kingdom's army was on the move. The restructured army corps could end up surrounded, cut off from supplies and vulnerable. His main mission was to subdue the Dwarven Kingdom, but withdrawing now would mean abandoning Caligulio and his forces, which seemed like the only option to prevent complete annihilation. However, confusion and chaos were spreading through the ranks, with friendly fire incidents adding to the turmoil. His advisors pleaded for a retreat, but Gaster knew admitting defeat would place all the blame on him. As a renowned military hero, he had never faced such a setback, and couldn't bear the thought of His Majesty's punishment. "We can't retreat. If we do, His Majesty is bound to punish me. I can't ever allow that to happen. I'm the man who'll become a hero, but now all the glory's disappearing. Unless I've got something firm to prove that it's not just my fault." The very prestige of the Empire was riding on this operation, and Gaster knew it. He had always been a small-minded person, focused on self-preservation and unhesitant to sacrifice his troops. His advisors urged him to use their main force to strike the enemy in the rear or consider a temporary retreat to avoid further casualties. Realizing that losing the unit under his command would lead to severe punishment, Gaster cursed his fate and blamed his subordinates for dragging him down. However, his rant was cut short by the sound of a massive explosion, throwing the main camp into turmoil. Reports came in of an enemy magic attack, suspected to be nuclear magic, which had easily penetrated their Legion magic defenses. The explosion occurred in the sky, and they had lost contact with all their allied airships. The realization that the entire flying combat corps was destroyed hit them hard. Desperate, Gaster ordered a retreat, but it was already too late. The damage was far worse than anyone had imagined, and the Empire's forces were in disarray. The decision to change course and gather themselves came too late to salvage the situation. Gaster's dreams of becoming a hero were shattered as he faced the grim reality of their impending defeat. As the battle raged on, a cool voice echoed through the battlefield.
"Huh? You're not going to claim this is the end, are you? Because I've already told you, invade us any further and we'll show no mercy."
Gaster turned his panicked head toward the voice and saw a beautiful snow-white face with a beaming smile. It was Testarossa. Fear flooded Gaster's mind, a deep instinctual terror. He stammered, "You!" Testarossa eyed him like an affectionate mother.
"I wonder if you forgot about that. If so, that's very rude of you."
Gaster tried to order his men to attack, but no one responded.
"I'm not sure what you're trying to do, but your men are resting at the moment. They must have been pretty tired, huh?"
Gaster's unique skill, performer, allowed him to detect movements through sound, but Testarossa made no noise. He couldn't hear the sounds of his fallen men. They were dead.
You didn't kill them, did you?"
He staggered away from her.
"I was a bit hungry, so I took some."
Took some? Took some what?"
"A few souls?"
she replied casually. Enraged, Gaster shouted, "Die, you foul demon! Mind Requiem!" He unleashed his most powerful move, scattering murderous sound waves meant to cause instant death. But Testarossa smiled elegantly.
"What a pleasant tone. It's a pity you had to be human. You have such wonderful talent as a musician, but now I have to kill you."
Her enraptured expression clouded with sadness. Seeing this, Gaster realized his attack had failed. He had been fooled by her beautiful appearance. Testarossa was definitely not human. She was a higher-ranked being than he had ever seen before, maybe even more powerful than the rampaging wolf hybrid. This was beyond dangerous. He thought, "Are you saying there are monsters like that all over this nation?" If so, then we may have gravely misjudged our strategy from the start. Gaster finally began to feel regret and foresaw the complete failure of the Empire's military operation. With Tempest having the catastrophe-class threat Veldora, the war was already dangerously close to being lost. There was no way they could stage a comeback. Desperate, he cried out, "Wait! I want to make a deal!" Testarossa, curious, asked, "Oh, what kind?" Throwing all shame aside, Gaster begged, I'm high-ranked in the Empire. I'm well-versed in our military operation. I have classified information. I can be useful to you, I promise. So please, spare my life." Despite his pleas, Gaster noticed several footsteps approaching quietly. He guessed they were from the Imperial Intelligence Bureau, IIB, directed by Tatsuya Kondo. These operatives were rumored to have first-class combat skills, and Gaster believed they were there to save him. He had nothing else to grasp onto, so he had to buy time by any means necessary. To his relief, it seemed his bet paid off. "Do you sense that? There's a demon—" "No, an archdemon," he heard, indicating the presence of IIB intelligence officers who might help him defeat Testarossa. Several soldiers jumped out in front of Gaster, shouting. He thanked his good fortune, and when he heard the term archdemon, it suddenly made sense. His physical attacks were useless. He was dealing with a spiritual life form. An archdemon was dangerous enough to pose a calamity-level threat. 3 men from the Imperial Intelligence Bureau, IIB, reassured Gaster. The leader stopped one from stating his name. "Now's not a good time to give out names." The first man turned toward Testarossa. "You're no regular archdemon, are you?" Another added, "It looks like she's received a physical body. No wonder she had such a faint presence." "Lieutenant General, we'll get to names later. For now, we have to team up to beat this evil demon." Gaster had no choice but to agree. The IIB men surrounded Testarossa with a chain made of monster hair and holy silver, blocking her movement. Unbeknownst to Gaster, this was the Imperial Suppression Stance, the Empire's most advanced killing formation. The chain was a legend-class treasure. The trio in disguise were Imperial Guardians: Davis, ranked 11th, Balt, ranked 38th, Gordon, ranked 64th. They were among the Empire's greatest fighters, nearly as strong as saints. Davis had a score to settle with Blanc, a primal demon, and now he was here to help Gaster. Watching the knights act as one to subdue Testarossa, Gaster felt a surge of hope. He assumed he was saved, and believed that if he continued to attack Testarossa with his mind requiem, even a spiritual life form like her couldn't last long. He adjusted his attack to target only spiritual beings, confident that this would work. However, he soon realized how naive he had been. Testarossa, being physically incarnated, was unaffected by his attacks. With a voice filled with malice, Testarossa reminisced, "These are the people who defeated me before, aren't they? This is so nice. I was rudely interrupted last time and couldn't finish my meal." The knights, alarmed by her presence, recognized her as Blanc, the original white. They were horrified to see her again, knowing they had sealed her away once before. Despite their fear, they tried to remain confident. "We've sealed you once already. We'll destroy you down to the soul this time," they declared. Testarossa laughed wickedly. Such lovely expressions: fear, anxiety, and completely unfounded confidence. "You haven't run away from me?" The knights retorted with determination. "We'll bury you as many times as it takes." Davis, the leader of the knights, remained calm and focused on his goal. He instructed Gaster to retreat and leave the battle to them, as they needed to maintain their cover while defeating the wolf demon, the combined Gobta and Ranga. In order to achieve his goal without blowing his cover, Davis intended to convince Gaster to withdraw his troops. Even though Davis didn't have the authority to give orders to the higher-ranked Gaster, with Blanc on the scene, time was running out. Gaster, unaware of this, was struggling to keep up with the situation. Desperately, he used his unique skill performer to order his entire army to retreat. But it was too late. The moment he encountered Testarossa, all hopes had already been dashed. Davis, Balt, and Gordon were heroes who once defeated a powerful demon in the Bloody Shore incident. Blanc, the dreaded original white who ruled over the demons of the East, came dangerously close to incarnating in this world. Since then, the Empire had become vigilant against demons, banning their summoning and establishing demon control offices in every city. If an archdemon, it would require the army's full mobilization to handle it. This primal demon like Blanc was beyond measure in terms of strength. Davis believed it was sheer luck that let them defeat Blanc before. Confident in their abilities, he knew they had the most powerful gear provided by His Majesty. Among the Imperial Guardians, the single digits held a special position, and Davis, ranked 11th, was their assistant. Davis felt assured that their combined powers could defeat any demon, no matter how formidable. Davis, brimming with confidence, urged Gaster to retreat and turn to his companions. "Both of you, open it up. It looks like Blank's incarnated herself, but she couldn't have stored up that many magicules yet. We'll hit her with all we got." Gordon and Bolt acknowledged him, and the pendants hanging from their necks began to glow. The light enveloped their bodies, revealing 3 warriors in golden full-plate mail, legend-class armor given only to the chosen ones. With their impeccable quality armor, Davis and his companions were ready to fight with all their might. "Bad luck for you, Original White. Maybe you've gained a physical body, but that's where it ends. Meeting us here was the end of your good fortune." Davis exclaimed, putting more strength into his grip on the chain. But to his shock, there was no response. Testarossa had slipped out of the chain effortlessly. "Look, do you think I'm going to let you do that?" Testarossa's chilling voice came from behind. Davis turned to see her hand on Gaster's neck. With a dull snap, the Lieutenant General collapsed, dead without resistance. "How?" Davis shouted instinctively. Gaster, despite his flaws, was a powerful Lieutenant General. He wasn't the kind to go down easily. As Davis looked at his hands, he realized the chain of holy silver and monster hair had been shattered. Confused frustration flashed across his face, as it did with Bolt and Gordon. They had no idea when Testarossa had moved, or how she had broken the chain. As the knights prepared to subdue Testarossa, she smiled at them with a mischievous glint. "Oh, were you waiting for me? This man tried to escape, so I had to give him a little punishment. If I didn't, that'd be disobeying Sir Rimuru's orders." Testarossa then addressed the knights. "By the way, could you stop calling me Blanc or the Original White? I have a name now. It's Testarossa. I'd hate it if you didn't use it." The knights were stunned. A name? Testarossa? Some fool gave a primal a name? Realizing their dire situation, they planned to retreat. Their teamwork was impeccable as they quickly divided tasks. Gordon cast the warp spell while Davis and Bolt prepared to hold off Testarossa. She let out an evil laugh, sounding almost beautiful. Bolt charged with his spear, but Testarossa had already vanished. A hot breath blew into his ear, filling his nostrils with a sweet scent. Testarossa's cold hand gripped his neck, and he collapsed, dead. Davis, watching this, felt a wave of panic and self-doubt for the first time in centuries. "Gordon, hurry up! She's too dangerous!" Gordon completed the teleportation magic, but the spell failed to activate. Testarossa kindly explained, "I'm not using the magic canceller wrong, am I?" Davis and Gordon were baffled. "What? The magic canceller?" Testarossa let out an exasperated sigh as their hopes dwindled. Testarossa had been sharing information with Ultima and Carrera via thought communication. Among the information she obtained was data on the magic cancellers installed on the airships. For Testarossa, recreating and using this technology was child's play. Such an act was well beyond the scope of human understanding, making it incomprehensible to Davis and Gordon. All they could grasp was their growing fear and confusion. "What? What are you? Whether you're a primal or not, there's no way an archdemon can have that much power," Davis shouted, trying to mask his fear. "You weren't this overwhelming the last time we fought. What did you do to evolve this much?" Gordon echoed. Testarossa gave them a bemused look. "Oh, how clever of you. That's right. Now that I have a name, I'm higher level than even an archdemon. Have you ever heard the term demon peer before? It's something completely different from an archdemon." This revelation plunged Davis and Gordon deeper into despair. Demon Peer? The second coming of Guy Crimson? But didn't you lose interest in this world when you lost the princess's body? Davis asked, his voice shaking. Not quite. By the time you came along back then, my contract with the girl had already been fulfilled. That's why I left, although certainly not without my regrets, she replied. Oh, I'm sorry. Were you laboring under the assumption that you could beat me? Well, silly. I think you see that's not going to happen now, she taunted. Davis felt his confidence shatter. I still haven't forgiven you for interrupting my meal back then, you know, she added. That's right. That beautiful lake was bathed in enough blood to turn crimson red, but that still didn't make me full. Nearly 10,000 innocent people died, Davis muttered, trying to buy time. Well, that's how our deal worked. Besides, you interrupted me before I could enjoy the main course. Now that we're all together, why don't we take this opportunity to have you atone for your sins, she suggested with an unsettling smile. Testarossa, behind the Bloody Shore tragedy, viewed the disaster as a simple meal. Davis's heart seethed with rage as he struggled to escape her binding spell. But his despair was just beginning. A cute voice, belonging to Ultima, was heard from above. Even Davis sensed there was something unusual about her. "Oh, is that you, Ultima?" said Testarossa. "I just ran into some old acquaintances of mine. Let's end this before Sir Rimuru gets angry." Davis couldn't comprehend the conversation. Two demon peers. He felt his confidence shatter. If it was just one archdemon, he might have had a chance. But facing two demon peers was too much. Gordon was already crouched down, sobbing like a child. Davis felt jealous of Balt, who had died without realizing the true identity of their foe. "Well, I'm sorry to say goodbye, but I have to go. Why don't I show you the magic you wanted to see?" Testarossa said, amused. She called forth a black flame, an abyss core, and crushed it in her hand. Laughing, she whispered, "Death Streak." Davis's eyes widened in fear. He couldn't comprehend the magic, but he knew it was incredibly evil. "You know Guy Crimson, don't you? This is the same magic he used when he became a demon lord." Davis's consciousness cut out, plunging into an even deeper abyss of desperation, wishing he had never known anything at all. The abyss core in Testarossa's hand became a black light, penetrating through almost all matter and rewriting genetic sequences to kill almost anything it touched. This deathly magic, the epitome of pure evil, was only survivable by spiritual life forms or those with memory retention skills. Spiritual particles emitted a special wave, making the dark light difficult to counteract with magic and impossible with physical means. Only other spiritual particles could resist it. Exposure to this light had a 99.999% fatality rate, but extremely rarely, survivors might transform into monsters, gaining new life. Deathstreak, a nuclear-level forbidden magic, destroyed life memory particles. It claimed Davis, ranked 11th, and Gordon, ranked 64th, as its first victims. The spell's rampage of death affected everything within a 500-yard radius, killing all living things. Testarossa ensured no allies were nearby before launching it. Testarossa and Ultima surveyed the results. "Doesn't look like there's anything alive in this whole area. By the way, you did a really good job with these, Testarossa," Ultima said. "Oh, what do you mean?" Testarossa replied. "These toys they call tanks. They look in perfect shape, so we can bring them back intact and examine them more," Ultima explained. "Well, of course. That's why I cleaned out only the humans from here," Testarossa said. Maybe I should have cast Deathstreak too instead of cutting corners up there. Then maybe I wouldn't have broken up all those toys in the sky," Ultima mused. "True, Ult. You were a bit too flashy. But if we can recover that first sample, it should be enough for reference," Testarossa said. Ultima sighed. "Sure, but I caused more damage than I thought. Those toys are so fragile. I meant to destroy one, but ended up breaking a bunch. Now that Sir Rimuru named us, we're stronger than ever. We need to be more careful," Testarossa noted. "Yeah, I feel bad. But I'm really worried about Carrera. She doesn't know what restraint means, and loves flashy magic, Ultima replied. That's why she's on standby at our headquarters. Rimuru was smart to assign her there, Testarossa reassured. Oh, that's a relief, Ultima exclaimed. Benimaru's a real worrywart, huh? He thinks there are people in the Empire who can harm Sir Rimuru. Even asked us to go easy to find out who it is, Ultima mentioned. That is troublesome. If winning was the goal, they should have sent us alone from the start, Testarossa agreed. It was Sir Rimuru's idea. He wanted Gobta and Gabil's forces to grow. Experience is gained through action, Ultima explained. That's a great idea. I get it, but you know, Testarossa said. At least we got to perform in the end. That's nice, Ultima added. While enjoying their conversation, they carefully gathered the souls of the dead around them. Deathstreak, the forbidden spell, had no known successful cases of turning someone into a monster. The only way it would work was if a soul was left to transform. By harvesting the souls, the chance of survival was 0. Testarossa and Ultima were aware of this and ensured no survivors before declaring the battle over. Testarossa felt no emotion witnessing the fate of those who opposed her. To her, they were just like anyone else, never significant in her mind. And with that, the battle with her cohort concluded. 2 departments of the Armored Division, the Magitank Force and the Flying Combat Corps, suffered complete defeat. With Lieutenant General Gaster's death, the Empire lost its local command, leaving soldiers isolated and struggling to flee. The only question remaining was how long this battle of annihilation would last. Gaster's Magitank Force consisted of 200,000 service members, and Major General Farragut's Flying Combat Corps had 40,000. With no commanders, the Imperial Army couldn't request a ceasefire, resulting in all Imperial forces on the ground and in the air losing their lives. Tempest was confirmed the victor, but the war wasn't over. General Caligulio, commander of the Armored Division, was unaware of the defeat. At that moment, the restructured Armor Corps, the heart of the Armored Division, was about to move toward Rimuru, the capital of Tempest. Gaizal, king of the dwarves, was stunned by the scene on the big screen. This is just... My liege, your agitation is showing on your face. Don't tell me you're still that naive about this? Jane, Dwargon's elderly arch-wizard, prodded. Ah, Jane, you say that, but how else are we supposed to react? All conventional wisdom about warfare is being thrown out the window, replied Vaughn, Admiral Paladin and Supreme Commander of the Dwarven Force. In the center of the meeting table, a screen was floating. The screen, provided by Rimuru's new technology, showed warfare at its worst, and even the usually jaded Gazelle found it extraordinary. This certainly turns conventional wisdom about war on its ear, doesn't it? Dolph, captain of the Pegasus Knights, sighed. Not even a Legion magic barrier could block that tank's attack. Defeat is inevitable without knowing anything. But we can handle it by building trenches and earthen walls, just like it was foretold to us. Dolph continued. They all nodded. Although the battle ended before their countermeasures could be used, they concluded that multiple layers of defensive walls could effectively reduce the power of the tanks. Looking at the Empire's equipment, I'd say their main focus is on medium to long-range strikes rather than close-quarters combat. It appears they've eliminated their heavy armor and are using light equipment instead, observed Gazelle. Yes, I've looked into that. It seems the Empire's invented a new type of weapon called a spell gun that allows even junior foot soldiers to easily wield magic. Furthermore, some of their troops are armed with guns, an otherworlder weapon. They apparently think the era of close-quarters combat is obsolete, explained Jane. Dolph nodded gravely. These so-called guns can penetrate iron armor without much difficulty, and their large tank force seems capable even against stout city walls. It all but mocks the weapons and armor that are the mainstays of dwarven industry. But we are in our world, and not another one, Gazelle insisted. Tactical theories that work over there are pointless if you can't incorporate the presence of magic into them. Indeed I am. The spell guns are a threat, but they did not match up well against their foes. Lord Rimuru has a large number of scale shields obtained from Charybdis. He was kind enough to give us an ample supply, and they allow us to cancel out most magic, concluded Vaughn. With magic being a real presence, the ability to defend against modern weapons while neutralizing the enemy's magic skills was evident. Today was a disaster for the Empire because they specialized too much in mid to long-range offense. When the enemy came too close, their vulnerability became clear. Geisel concluded that it all depended on who controlled the reins. Making the most effective use of war intel was crucial to avoid similar traps. However, his real concern lay with the individual strength of the monsters. Gobta, Ranga, and Gabil had grown incredibly, and even the monsters under them seemed much stronger. Liberal use of recovery potions allowed them to engage in hazardous battle tactics. The large-scale production of the hypocute herb disrupted the norms of battle on this planet. Jane's words broke the silence. She addressed the pressing issue of the demon girls. The one who set the flying ships afire used nuclear flame, a ritual magic difficult even for her. But the real problem was the white-haired girl who used Deathstreak, a forbidden spell deemed uncontrollable. Everyone listened in silence. Even a casual observer could see how beyond the norm these demon girls were. Henrietta, the night assassin, had investigated Tempest's new hires. Diablo, Rimuru's advisor, had brought them seemingly out of nowhere. They were demons, rumored to be old acquaintances of Diablo. Rimuru explained they were intelligence officers, but Gazelle assumed they were much more. Gazelle knew the identity of these girls, but suggested it was better not to know. However, the extraordinary battle made it clear that knowing the truth was less terrifying than the unknown. "Are you joking?" to himself. The group nodded at Jane's grave foreboding as Gazelle steeled his resolve. During the festival at the Monster Nation, Gazelle had attended a secret meeting where he encountered Rimuru's secretary, Diablo. Everyone who participated in the Tempest Founders Festival was acquainted with Diablo, but only Jane, who was back in Dwargon, was unaware of the gravity of the situation. Gazelle revealed, "According to Elmesia, Diablo is a primal. I can only assume he's noir, the original black. That's the only one not previously bound to a claimed territory, and there've been sightings of him all over the world before." Jane's face paled as she realized the implications. A primal noir is working for the demon lord Rimuru? "Yes," Gazelle confirmed. Jane was incredulous. "Why were you silent about this until now?" The shock didn't end there. Henrietta explained that Diablo had recruited several more demons, Testarossa, Ultima, and Carrera, who were known to be his subordinates, treated each other as equals. Dolph and Vaughn's hopeful conjecturing that they were merely old demons under Diablo was quickly shot down. The group reflected on the battle they had just witnessed. Testarossa's and Ultima's strength was massive, and not even Jane could fully estimate it. Gazelle sighed. "I told you, you'd be happier not knowing." The realization dawned on everyone that the situation was far more dangerous than they had anticipated. Gazelle felt bad for keeping quiet about Diablo, but he doubted telling everyone would have changed much. Diablo hadn't spread evil, and Rimuru had promised to keep him in line. Gazelle trusted his former training partner's word, but never imagined Rimuru would bring more primals. Everyone realized that being aware of Diablo's true nature earlier wouldn't have changed their current situation. Gazelle reminded them that casting their lot with Rimuru meant trusting him, and it was too late for regrets. Vaughn, Henrietta, and Dolph agreed to trust in Rimuru, while Jane expressed her concern about the vast concentration of forces Rimuru might assemble. She acknowledged that if they couldn't deal with it, there was no point in considering ways to. With Gazelle's final statement, they shelved the issue. The war wasn't over. The Dwarven Kingdom's central entrance troops had been eradicated, but a standoff remained at the East Gate. There were still signs of disquiet around Rimuru, the capital of Tempest. Gazelle grumbled about Rimuru's dissatisfaction despite the victory, but Jane suggested that the Empire might still be unaware of their defeat. Gazelle nodded, agreeing that if the Empire knew, they'd likely abort the mission. Jane added that the Empire probably used magic to coordinate their forces. Given the sudden change in the situation, it would be hard to believe a report of total defeat without suspecting an enemy ruse. Gazelle concurred, noting that General Caligulio was not incompetent, but would likely be seen as a coward if he retreated without experiencing defeat firsthand. The Imperial forces wouldn't yield until they tasted defeat themselves. Jane's and Vaughn's observations made sense, and Gazelle recognized that he would likely make the same decisions if he were in the Empire's shoes. He felt pity for the soldiers and officers who had to follow orders, but as invaders, they bore the responsibility for their actions. Gazelle, known as a wise king, had no intention of taking responsibility for an empire that was currently engaging in hostilities with him. All he could do was speculate on the future. Out of the 940,000 Imperial soldiers who invaded the Forest of Jura, 240,000 had already been lost. By this point, there was little doubt about Rimuru's ultimate victory. Vaughn agreed, noting that Rimuru was far too astute to be caught off guard. The question on everyone's mind was how much more sacrifice the Empire was willing to endure. Gazelle emphasized the importance of keeping careful records of the war to learn from it, and reminded everyone that humans must never rile a demon lord. The strength of the monsters under Rimuru's command was reshaping conventional war strategies, posing a catastrophe-level threat. Gazelle felt that the Empire was getting what it deserved, but he wanted to see the battle through to the end to ensure their sacrifice was not in vain. Despite trusting Rimuru as a person, Gazelle had to prepare for the worst possible outcome if Rimuru ever turned against him. As a leader, he had to take the best measures to protect his people, even if he didn't have all the answers yet. Gazelle acknowledged the difficulty in taking on a primal or defeating Veldora, realizing that his hands were tied, faced with an unanswerable question. Meanwhile, on Tempest Headquarters, the sight on the big screen was almost surreal. Gazing at the battlefield, it was evident that Rimuru's army was decisively overpowering their opponents. Gobta, appearing uncharacteristically cool, stormed around, crushing tanks with his bare hands. Unified with Ranga, he truly embodied the spirit of the Big Four. Gabil, too, had transformed into a formidable dragon-like monster, decimating enemy ships with powerful energy attacks. Team Hiryu, having mastered the dragon body skill, showcased incredible transformations that heightened their combat abilities. The dragon body skill, previously underestimated, proved to be a game-changer despite its 10-minute limit and risky nature. However, the highlight of the battle was a massive mid-air explosion that obliterated the Empire's entire airship fleet, leading to a major offensive by the Tempest forces. With Gobta's and Gabil's forces combined, they gained a definitive upper hand. Team Hiryu executed devastating breath attacks from the air, causing one-sided damage to the Empire's ground forces. Their agility and small size rendered the tank guns ineffective. The Empire's attempts to counterattack were systematically crushed by Veyron and Zonda under Ultima's command. These old demons had an uncanny ability to target and eliminate the strongest foes, whether they were squad captains or regular soldiers. Their unconventional butler and cook outfits struck fear into the hearts of the Imperial troops. Hakuro showed no mercy as he slashed through the enemy's supply units with his sword. Some soldiers tried to introduce themselves, but Hakuro's swift blade silenced them before they could finish. "Forgive me," he said to the fallen. "Sir Rimuru is watching this battle. He has ordered us to go at full power, and thus I can offer you no mercy." Despite the harshness, Rimuru realized that withdrawing the order now would cause confusion on the battlefield. So, he decided to watch how the battle unfolded. This decision turned out to be wise. The Imperial soldiers targeted by Veyron, Zonda, and Hakuro were equal to or better than Paladins in ability, equipped with legend-class gear even superior to spiritual armor. These elite soldiers were likely the Imperial Guardians, a group handpicked from the best the Empire had to offer, including Otherworlders. Their ranks confirmed their membership, and if given the chance to fully engage, they could have caused significant chaos. Taking them out early, as Hakuro did, was a smart move. Veyron and Zonda also acted swiftly, targeting the most fearsome foes with precision. If all the champions had bonded together, defeating them wouldn't have been simple. but their carelessness on the field made them vulnerable. Rimuru recognized that showing mercy could lead to the enemy taking advantage, causing unthinkable damage. Compassion had no place in this war. They had to remain resolute and let everyone do their best until the end. While admiring Hakuro and the team's exploits, something strange was happening at the Empire's Command HQ. Raphael reported the activation of the large-scale destructive magic death streak by Testarossa. Alarmed, Rimuru projected the scene on the big screen. Testarossa and Ultima stood smiling amidst the destruction, with all the Empire's tanks and infantry decimated. Tens of thousands were dead. Deathstreak, a nuclear magic spell, was a deadly death ray that annihilated all living creatures. Rimuru was horrified, almost shouting, "Don't use that kind of dangerous magic." Ultima's nuclear flame was dangerous, but Deathstreak was several times more so. The spell's activation decided the battle, leaving no surviving enemy commanders. It was only a matter of time before the remaining troops were eliminated, resulting in a decisive victory for the Dwarven Kingdom side. The Imperial army, considered a decoy, was annihilated. The scale of destruction was beyond what Rimuru had anticipated when he ordered them to go all out. Benimaru, understandably upset, questioned the point of his strategy, asking for an explanation about the intelligence officers. Rimuru admitted he had kept some things to himself. The surprise and intensity of the attack left everyone seeking answers. Feeling the weight of the situation, Rimuru glanced at Veldora and Ramirez for support, but they offered none. After a while of thinking, Rimuru decided to reveal the truth to his companions. He asked if they knew what a primal was, and Shuna, who had been serving coffee, explained that primals were the 7 sovereigns, the source of all demons. She revealed that Diablo was one of them. Benimaru was surprised to learn that Testarossa, Carrera, and Ultima were also sovereigns of demondom. Shuna's peaceful smile as she disclosed this classified information left Benimaru speechless. Rimuru realized that Shuna was more formidable than he had thought. He asked Diablo to explain, and Diablo admitted to being a primal demon. As Rimuru listened and sipped his coffee, Benimaru understood the strength of these demons, but wished he had known from the beginning. Rimuru explained that he kept quiet to avoid causing unnecessary worry among his friends. Ramirez, Benimaru, and Geld reassured Rimuru that his concerns were unnecessary. They accepted Diablo and the other demons as friends and did not discriminate based on strength or appearance. Their acceptance helped Rimuru banish his worries. Shuna and the others continued to treat Diablo and the demons the same, which comforted Rimuru. Feeling relieved, Rimuru apologized for worrying too much. Benimaru and Geld appreciated his concern and thanked him for assigning Carrera and the others to them, acknowledging Rimuru's care for their well-being. Rimuru wondered how Gabel, Gobta, and the others would react, but they seemed to be doing fine. Shion confidently assured that everyone was getting along with Diablo, and her approval put Rimuru at ease. As Shion and Diablo exchanged playful glares, Rimuru felt relieved that his worries were unnecessary. They continued discussing the day's events. Rimuru explained that he assigned Testarossa and Ultima to the field army to counter any Demon Lord-class threats from the enemy. However, they went overboard, annihilating the entire enemy army without hesitation. Diablo cheerfully acknowledged their enthusiasm and promised to give them a lesson to moderate their actions. Surveying the damages, Rimuru found that the battle, which lasted only 2 hours, resulted in many injuries but no permanent casualties. A cheery voice announced that all casualties had been fully healed. The demons had been given Tempest-made high potions, allowing them to heal most wounds quickly. Even those who seemed dead at first were playing possum, and their severed limbs were fully healed with full potions. Gabel and Team Hiryu suffered significant bodily fatigue from using the dragon body skill. The overexertion left them paralyzed for about 24 hours, highlighting the double-edged nature of the skill. To avoid further issues, they decided to limit the use of dragon body to once every other day. The Empire's forces, led by Lieutenant General Gaster and Major General Farraga, totaled 240,000 troops. None were taken as prisoners of war. They were all dead. Rimuru, having previously become a demon lord by killing 20,000 people, now felt a sense of inevitability and responsibility. The souls of the fallen were being offered to him, providing a precise count of the defeated enemy soldiers. Upon awakening to a true demon lord, Rimuru realized there was no further evolution for himself, as excess souls didn't influence his own power anymore. He received a notice from Raphael that he had exceeded the set limit of acquired souls, making it possible to awaken his subordinates connected through his soul lineage. Raphael explained that by giving a set amount of souls to a qualified receiver, they could be awakened to a new level of power. The number required was 100,000 souls per subordinate. Rimuru had around 250,000 extra souls, enough to awaken 2 people from his pool of eligible subordinates: Ranga, Benimaru, Shion, Gabul, Geld, Diablo, Testarossa, Ultima, Carrera, Kumara, Zagion, and Adelman. Creating a soul corridor would allow Rimuru to awaken his subordinates even from a distance, unaffected by time and space, while also strengthening their bond. Reflecting on his own experience, Rimuru recognized the immense power gained from awakening and saw no reason to hesitate in evolving someone like Benimaru to that level. As Rimuru considered the implications of soul lineage, he realized it referred to the deep connection formed when he named his subordinates. Naming a monster triggered evolution, but it was inherently risky. Raphael's guidance helped mitigate those risks, ensuring Rimuru's safety. Normally, naming required the namer's own magicules, a demanding task that only a few, like Guy, could manage. Rimuru valued his friends and wouldn't experiment on them lightly. Despite Raphael's assurances, the process still felt precarious. The conditions for awakening remained unclear, and the long dormancy known as initiation during his harvest festival added to his hesitation. With the Imperial Army's main force of 700,000 soldiers approaching, it was not the right time for risky endeavors. For now, Rimuru decided to postpone the awakenings until the situation stabilized. He ordered the goblins to salvage intact tanks and airship wreckage, and assigned the Wyvern Riders to transport the salvage to the Dwarven Kingdom, ensuring Gabul and the Dragonutes had ample time to recover from their fatigue. Rimuru decided to send the Blue Numbers to join the goblins on Benimaru's suggestion. Benimaru reasoned that returning to the capital would be futile, as they wouldn't arrive in time for the final battle. Gazelle also offered reinforcements, but Rimuru assured him they were managing for now. The dwarves were still engaged in their own conflict, with 60,000 Imperial forces at the east exit, identified as Yuuki's division. Confident in Gazel's abilities, Rimuru focused on the main mission, settling the score with the Empire's main force. Although they had achieved a huge victory in the opening battle, the enemy's numbers were still formidable. Rimuru's staff, however, were highly motivated. Shion, eager to prove herself, was frustrated by the demon's success. When reminded of her duty as Rimuru's bodyguard, she quickly regained her composure. Carrera, excited by Ultima's bragging about their victory, wanted to join the fight. Despite her enthusiasm and suggestion to use nuclear magic, Benimaru and Geld advised patience, emphasizing the importance of timing her actions for maximum impact. Reluctantly, Carrera agreed to wait for further orders. Carrera acknowledged Geld's advice and decided to wait, respecting the wisdom in his words. This highlighted an unexpected synergy between the two. Shion, despite her own eagerness for battle, also provided sound advice, emphasizing the importance of their role as swords for their leader. Morale was high among Rimuru's forces. The soldiers inside the labyrinth and the Second Army Corps were eager and ready. The Empire's 700,000 troops posed a formidable challenge, but Rimuru's strategy emphasized quality over quantity. The labyrinth, guarded by Veldora and Ramirez, was a key element in their defense, offering an opportunity to minimize casualties and bolster their numbers with labyrinth monsters. Rimuru entrusted the labyrinth to Veldora and Ramirez, whose eager assurances provided comfort. Inside the dungeon, the wear and tear on their army could be reduced to 0, and they could leverage the labyrinth's monsters to compensate for their numerical disadvantage. Benimaru suggested that Yuki's tactics might be fostering suspicion within the Empire, making them wary of trusting him completely. This insight was crucial, as it revealed the complexity of their temporary partnership with Yuki. If the Empire viewed Yuki as a potential threat, it could work to Rimuru's advantage. Shion's remark about Yuki infiltrating the enemy rather than fighting alongside them struck a chord. Benimaru agreed, noting that the Imperials likely viewed Yuki with suspicion and didn't fully trust him. This made the 60,000 troops by the east exit of Dwargon unpredictable. While King Gazelle was aware and prepared, the main concern was the Empire's main force, which was attacking from multiple sides. Rimuru's worry extended to Farminus, the newly established kingdom by Yom, which was not ready for large-scale war. Supporting Farminus would complicate matters, so it was a relief that the Empire didn't seem to be targeting it directly. However, the possibility of the Empire bypassing Tempest and attacking Blumund was a real concern. In such a scenario, Geld's forces would need to counter-attack from the rear, making it a challenging ground war with fewer advantages from the Labyrinth. Benimaru believed that luring the enemy into the Labyrinth was the safest and most effective strategy. The Labyrinth's unique features provided a significant tactical edge, allowing them to minimize casualties and leverage the monsters within. Fighting on equal ground would eliminate this advantage, making a direct confrontation riskier. By bringing the battle into the Labyrinth, Rimuru's forces could capitalize on their strengths and mitigate the enemy's numerical superiority. With the Labyrinth as the intended main battlefield, the core strategy remained consistent even for ground combat. Identify the strongest fighters on the enemy side. Just as goblins were used as bait before, this time Geld's force would play that role. Benimaru's strategies all revolved around this principle, aiming to protect Rimuru, their supreme general. Rimuru deeply cared for his friends, and Benimaru and the others prioritized his safety. Although Rimuru didn't want them risking their lives for him, he recognized Benimaru's tactical prowess, which minimized damage in previous battles. Trusting Benimaru allowed Rimuru to relax and focus on inspiring confidence in his leadership. On the outside, they had set up a large gate to lure the Imperial troops in, and despite initial concerns about it appearing too deliberate, the plan worked. The Empire, all 700,000 of them, took the bait and fanned out in front of the main gate. With the enemy now fully visible and no longer using stealth, Rimuru's forces felt confident. Capitulation was never an option, and this setup was ideal for them. Rimuru, seeing the Imperial soldiers lined up on the big screen, felt assured of their tactical victory. Benimaru confirmed this, noting that as long as they were in the Labyrinth, they would take 0 damage, guaranteeing their win. Without an unimaginable champion to defeat a demon lord, they had a significant advantage. The Labyrinth's capture of the enemy worked perfectly. Rimuru praised Ghidorah for the setup. The enemy now revealed their full extent, clustering together rather than spreading out. This helped Rimuru's forces gauge their numbers more accurately. While a spread-out force might have hidden stronger opponents, the concentrated formation made it easier to anticipate their movements. Strategically, it was unlikely the Empire would bypass the nation. A blockade at the Labyrinth Gate, with a portion of their troops left behind, could complicate things, but it was manageable. If the Empire marched toward the western nations, Rimuru's forces would still find ways to transport themselves, though limited to familiar locations. Despite potential challenges, Rimuru's primary aim was to weaken the enemy as much as possible before any ground war. Veldora and Ramirez suggested sending a warning to agitate the enemy into deploying more soldiers inside the Labyrinth. However, Rimuru decided against it, considering the message already carved on the massive gate. Through these gates, the weak are unworthy to pass. Ramirez was eager to see the enemy's reaction to the message. Benimaru would likely charge in, trap or not, while Veldora, confident in his power, would ignore it. Ramirez, on the other hand, would follow Beretta if he insisted. Diablo pointed out that anyone ignoring the warning forfeited their right to Rimuru's mercy, effectively making it a challenge. Shion expressed a fierce determination, saying that any enemy too cowardly to enter the gate didn't belong on the battlefield and deserved to be annihilated. This sentiment resonated with the rest of the staff, who were all highly motivated and eager to dedicate their victories to Rimuru. With the potential to awaken 7 more subordinates with the collected souls, Rimuru resolved to stay focused and not let these thoughts consume him. As he watched the big screen, he saw the Imperial soldiers moving in formation towards the gate. Benimaru was determined not to let a single soldier escape, while Geld highlighted their ability to use the terrain to their advantage. Carrera, eager to participate, was seamlessly included in the strategy, reflecting the team's confidence. Despite Rimuru's initial concerns, the readiness and boldness of his staff were evident. They viewed the upcoming battle with a strong sense of assurance, treating it as an already won challenge. Xion, ever eager for battle, stepped up to join the fray, despite her role as Rimuru's bodyguard. The control center was the safest place for Rimuru, making Xion's deployment a possibility if ground combat became necessary. Rimuru assured Xion to stay calm and wait for further instructions, while Diablo volunteered to handle Rimuru's protection if needed. With Testarossa and Ultima on standby, ready to teleport in at a moment's notice, Benimaru assigned Xion a role, much to her delight. As preparations continued, Veldora and Ramirez, brimming with enthusiasm, left to fulfill their roles in the labyrinth. Veldora's eagerness, despite this being his first real day of work as the master of the labyrinth, was encouraging. With the enemy's movement on the big screen, Rimuru adopted a confident tone, preparing to face the 700,000-strong main army of the Empire. Meanwhile, on the Empire side, without knowing their armies, one side Slater, dreaming about the victory. Caligulio, the confident commander of the armored division, watched as his elite troops streamed through the massive gate, ready to conquer the labyrinth and secure immense wealth. The Magitank division led the charge, supported by 100 airships from the Flying Combat Corps to counter any potential appearance by Veldora. These airships also transported the Magical Beast Division westward under Gradim's command. Caligulio's task was to provide logistical support with 300 airships, transporting military supplies. Their forces were concentrated to prepare for a battle against Veldora. With elite magicians on board, the airships were ready to ensure victory. The simultaneous dual-pronged operation aimed to overwhelm the West, with Gradim's force targeting Anglesia's capital. The plan involved making a conspicuous entrance with the Magitank division, drawing the enemy's attention. Caligulio would then lead the main force in a grand attack on Rimuru's stronghold. According to intel, Rimuru could transport his entire capital into the labyrinth. Thus, surrounding the gate to block escape routes was crucial. Caligulio, confident in his strategy, believed that the dwarves of Dwargon, led by heroic King Gazelle, stood no chance against his advanced armored division. He saw their traditional weapons and methods as outdated, convinced that his Magitanks and new combat systems would easily overpower them. The Empire had never fully challenged Dwargon due to their neutrality and strength, but now saw an opportunity to crush them. His confidence was so high that he never imagined defeat. Just moments earlier, he had received news that negotiations with the enemy had failed and hostilities had begun. Caligulio felt assured of his victory as they captured the lands believed to be Rimuru's stronghold. Caligulio contemplated his troops, certain of their success. He saw no reason to worry, even though Lieutenant General Gaster and Major General Faraga had not reported back. Caligulio assumed they were too focused on their victories to send updates. However, the liaison officer assigned to Faraga was acting strangely. Caligulio's good mood was interrupted by an alarming report. Major General Faraga had encountered a monster believed to be Veldora. After the initial report, communication had gone silent. The communications wizard explained that the Forest of Jura, filled with magicules, could easily jam voice transmissions. This made sense to Caligulio, considering the forest was Veldora's domain and home to a demon lord. Deciding not to worry, Caligulio reasoned that if his forces were engaged in combat, they wouldn't have time for reports. The magicules would block any calls anyway, especially if Veldora was on the field. Caligulio shifted his focus back to the labyrinth. Before him lay a vast clearing, with a huge gate marking the entrance to the labyrinth. Probing revealed no traps, just a simple gate waiting for his forces. The inscription, "Through these gates the weak are unworthy to pass," confirmed Caligulio's strategy. He saw it as a challenge, a sign that the monsters were hiding their treasures, fearful of the Empire's power. Confident in his plan, Caligulio laughed at what he perceived as the monsters' shallow intelligence. He believed that taking the enemy's supplies would be an easy and effective tactic. Caligulio's soldiers were enhanced by magic and otherworldly science, allowing them to work at full strength without food or water for a week. Each soldier carried energy bars that provided enough sustenance for a day's activity, making logistics easier for the Empire. Potable water could be conjured via magic, so supply issues were not a concern. With these provisions, their elite soldiers could stay active in the labyrinth for up to 27 days. Caligulio mocked the enemy's hopes of cutting off their supplies, confident in their own preparations. His staff officers joined in the mocking, believing that Rimuru had made a grave mistake by underestimating their restructured armor core. They were certain Rimuru was hiding in fear within the labyrinth. Caligulio and his team were confident of their success, believing they would soon drag Rimuru out and make Caligulio a hero for slaying a demon lord. The first step was to seize the labyrinth and establish a military base, maintaining their momentum as they overran the west. Caligulio wanted to complete this before Gradim and his magical beast division conquered the west from the north. Caligulio's confidence in his campaign was unwavering. Even if the accomplishment list wasn't as long, defeating Veldora the Storm Dragon alone would be a significant triumph for the Empire. Taking down Rimuru as well would cement Caligulio as the war's greatest achiever. His staff shared his confidence, believing their massive force of 700,000 was unbeatable. Their plan was straightforward: build a barrier around their camp, march into the labyrinth, and strip it bare. As they descended into the labyrinth, they remained oblivious to the true nature of the challenge they were about to face. The labyrinth never turned away those who came for it, even if they didn't respect its rules. The invaders were about to encounter the labyrinth's true form, a living hell beyond anything they had ever experienced. In one of the deepest rooms of the labyrinth, there was a secret conference room unknown to Rimuru. The rulers of the maze, rarely seen together, had gathered for a crucial discussion. The meeting was led by Beretta, the general manager of Labyrinth Affairs and Ramirez's aide. Seated at the round ebony table were the following individuals: Ninehead Kumara, guardian of Floor 90. Insect Kaiser, Zegion, guardian of Floor 80. Insect Queen, Apito, boss of Floor 79. Immortal King, Adelman, guardian of Floor 70. Death Paladin, Alberto, Adelman's advance guard on Floor 70. These were the 10 dungeon marvels, joined by Ghidorah, an old sharp-eyed wizard. Bovix and Equix, co-guardians of Floor 50. Bovix and Equix felt out of place among these titans, realizing the stark difference in power. The atmosphere was tense, with everyone constantly debating who was the strongest. Ghidorah, though new, actively participated. Beretta and the Dragon Lords didn't partake in the competition, but didn't discourage it either. This only fueled the Marvel's desire to prove themselves. Adelman's recent promotion, praised by Rimuru, had rekindled their enthusiasm, especially those from the deeper floors who rarely saw action. In this competitive spirit, the Guardians seized any opportunity to demonstrate their strength, eager to be recognized as the most useful among them. Even Ghidorah, the newest member, was eager to prove his worth and support his old friend Adelman. He believed that a strong performance would secure him a position. Adelman, on the other hand, was determined to serve Rimuru even better, aiming for higher recognition. While he saw the other Guardians as obstacles, he didn't view them as enemies. Alberto, following Adelman's lead, also aspired to enhance his reputation, and was more ambitious than he appeared. Apito and Kumara had a strained relationship, with Kumara jealous of Apito's past opportunities to shine. Apito, being equally competitive, refused to back down, resulting in constant friction between the two. Zegion, standing at the pinnacle of the labyrinth's hierarchy, often found himself pulled into the ongoing debates about who was the strongest. Despite their rivalries, none of the Guardians truly hated each other. Their competition was driven by a desire to be the best and a mutual respect, not malice. As the room quieted down, all eyes were on the main seats reserved for Veldora and Ramirez. Beretta, seated at his chair, confirmed that the meeting was to discuss how they would handle the invading army at the labyrinth's door. A tense atmosphere filled the hall, but it was soon broken by the arrival of Ramirez and Veldora. Their presence elevated the excitement, and Ramirez addressed the group with unusual seriousness. She called for ideas on how to handle the unprecedented crisis posed by the invading army. Kumara was eager to speak, but Apito was quicker, suggesting they kill all the invaders. This sparked a glare from Kumara, who was jealous of Apito's past battles with the Paladins. But Apito found those battles boring. Veldora stepped in to defuse the situation, reassuring everyone that they would all have a chance to fight. He found it amusing that the enemy believed the deepest level of the dungeon was floor 60, despite it being advertised as having 100 floors. Ramirez agreed, finding it too troublesome to wait for the invaders to reach deeper levels. With 700,000 soldiers crowding the area around the gate, Rimuru had instructed them to lure as many as possible into the labyrinth. However, managing such a large crowd would take time. Ramirez proposed dividing the enemy, assigning 1,000 soldiers per floor and repeating as needed. The Empire's soldiers, marching in neat rows, allowed for smooth entry into the labyrinth. This approach would expedite the process and potentially bring strong opponents into the labyrinth, making it an exciting prospect for the Guardians. Veldora added that finding a grave threat to Rimuru could be a significant achievement, easing Benimaru's concerns. To the Labyrinth Guardians, the Big Four serving Rimuru were figures of deep admiration. Benimaru, in particular, was held in high esteem as Rimuru's closest friend and most trusted confidant. If Veldora had a say, he'd assert his position as Rimuru's staunchest ally. The Guardians' motivation and ambition were palpable. Apito and Kumara, despite their earlier friction, quickly aligned their goals. Adalman, echoing their sentiments, confirmed their ability to handle intruders as they saw fit, which Ramirez affirmed. Then Ramirez started to outline the strategy. Troops would enter the labyrinth starting from floor 41, with each floor handling 1,000 soldiers, progressing downwards. Bovix and Equix, though anxious, would be briefed on their specific roles later. The idea was to spread out the enemy across various floors, with each Dragon Lord managing 10,000 soldiers at a time. In total, the labyrinth could house up to 540,000 invaders. Ramirez aimed for at least 350,000. She also announced temporary rule changes. Dragon Lord chambers were expanded, floors were rearranged, and the condition for beating the labyrinth was updated. Intruders could not leave until they defeated Veldora, meaning the Empire would need to deploy their full might. The invaders needed to collect 10 keys from the 10 dungeon marvels to face Veldora. This news excited the marvels and even gained approval from the Dragon Lords. Apito and Kumara quickly aligned, eager for the challenge. Alberto and his master, Adalman, were also ready, while others quietly prepared. The room was buzzing with anticipation. Beretta, overseeing the marvels, addressed Ramirez. Ramirez confirmed that Rimuru approved their plans. Beretta then stood up and announced his intention to give his position to the marvel who performed best in the battle. The marvels were thrilled, each vying for the chance to earn this coveted spot. Even Bovix and Equix, though anxious, hoped to join the 10 marvels. However, their ambitions were dashed by what Beretta said next, shattering their hopes and adding to the tension in the room. She said Ghidorah would fill up the 10 dungeon marvels, temporarily. Upon hearing that, Ghidorah was surprised but calm at the announcement of his provisional appointment to the 10 dungeon marvels. He saw this as a chance to shine and prove himself worthy of a permanent position. Having lived a long life, Ghidorah understood his place among the marvels, and knew he had to make an impression. "I will humbly accept your offer," he declared, to which Beretta replied gratefully. With Beretta stepping down, Ghidorah was assigned to floor 60, where he would work with the demon Colossus boss. This opportunity felt like a dream come true for Ghidorah, who had already been assisting with Ramirez's research. He was ready to prove his worth in the upcoming battle. Ramirez suggested giving Ghidorah a nickname, catching him off guard. With the Empire invading, Ghidorah thought defensive positions should be prioritized, but the big bosses remained calm and casual. Seeing Veldora, Ramirez, and especially Rimuru in action, Ghidorah couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. Despite his usual lack of loyalty, he was impressed by their leadership and strategic prowess. Then they come up with title, Rune Master. Meanwhile, Ramirez had another crucial announcement for Bovix and Equix, who nervously awaited their task. She assigned them to stand by on floor 30 with the responsibility of eliminating any escaping invaders. Their resurrection points were set on the same floor, ensuring they could return quickly if defeated. Motivated and anxious, Bovix and Equix promised to give their best effort. The boss of floor 30 was an Ogre Lord, ranked B+, along with his 5 minions. Under the command of the A-ranked Bovix and Equix, they formed a formidable team. Despite their nerves, the duo realized that even if invaders made it past floor 30, there was no escape for them. This knowledge bolstered their confidence. Determined to impress and earn recognition, Bovix and Equi resolved to crush every fleeing Imperial soldier they encountered. With their anxieties vanishing, they were filled with enthusiasm to live up to Ramirez's expectations. With their roles now clearly defined, the Guardians of the Labyrinth prepared for the impending invasion. Ramirez addressed the group, emphasizing the importance of luring as many Imperials into the Labyrinth as possible. The Guardians understood their mission, to observe the enemy's movements on the first day and act accordingly. Ramirez delivered one final piece of news that brought a serious tone to the room. Rimuru would be watching the battle closely, and the next overseer would be decided based on their performance. This revelation brought a newfound intensity among the Guardians. Even the typically silent Zegion was moved by the knowledge that Rimuru would be observing. Zegion, known for his loyalty and dedication to Rimuru, found himself particularly emotional at the prospect of showcasing his growth. Veldora, who had been training Zegion, confirmed Ramirez's words and encouraged the Guardians to give their best effort. The Guardians, driven by their admiration for Rimuru and their desire to prove themselves, were ready for the challenge. Everyone who entered the labyrinth, including the Empire soldiers, had to agree to the rules. They could not leave unless they beat the dungeon. Despite the implied threat, the soldiers, driven by dreams of fortune and glory, eagerly filed into the labyrinth. Ramirez, showing no mercy, welcomed them as her enemies. Zegion, filled with resolve, muttered his dedication to Rimuru as he left his seat. With that signal, the Guardians sprang into action, preparing to face the invaders in the labyrinth. The Imperial army advanced in orderly columns, their movements precise and coordinated. Each soldier wore a safety belt, connected to those in front and behind, maintaining a consistent distance between columns. Separate combat teams moved freely, ready to engage and support the main force when necessary. Confident in their numbers and preparation, they believed no labyrinth could stand in their way. Caligulio, pleased with their progress, anticipated the wealth awaiting them. The maze itself posed little challenge. The true test lay in the monsters within. Initial intelligence suggested the labyrinth had 60 floors, though rumors of 100 floors persisted. Dismissing these as exaggerations, Caligulio focused on the treasures and magic crystals hidden deep within the maze. His plan was meticulous. Spirit magic practitioners would map the path, special ops teams would neutralize traps, combat teams would handle monsters, and cleanup teams would gather valuable resources. Each column's lead member oversaw the process, ensuring efficiency and coordination. The gathered treasure would be sent back to the entrance gate by the linked soldiers, where it would be transported to the command HQ. This method allowed for quick response to any unforeseen issues, with soldiers trained to retreat and report if needed. Initially, his strategy unfolded smoothly, but after the first 1,000 soldiers entered the labyrinth, contact was abruptly lost. The cleanly severed ropes indicated interference with spatial links inside the maze. Though briefed on the labyrinth's shifting structure, they hadn't expected such a swift disruption. It troubled Caligulio, but he didn't halt the brigade of soldiers. Observing further, he discovered that the labyrinth changed its structure with every 1,000 soldiers that entered. This realization led him to believe that the enemy was welcoming them in a calculated manner. He speculated that the stairs they saw might not lead to the second basement floor, but to another level altogether. Caligulio, who had predicted these developments with reasonable accuracy, knew the labyrinth's changes were deliberate. The soldier chatter before contact was lost indicated nothing unusual, making it unlikely that something happened spontaneously. He deduced that the labyrinth's shifts were a strategic move by the Demon Lord. With the realization that they lost contact exactly after 1,000 soldiers entered, Caligulio concluded that the enemy was trying to manage their presence within the labyrinth. Despite this, his troops had already gathered some valuable treasures and high-quality magic crystals. Halting the invasion would seal the fates of the 2,000 soldiers already inside, so Caligulio decided to continue with the original plan. He believed the enemy was trying to threaten them into giving up and buying time for reinforcements from Dwargon. Confident in his strategy, Caligulio resolved to press on, ensuring everyone understood their primary objective was to conquer the labyrinth. Convinced he saw through the enemy's ploy, Caligulio weighed the potential treasure against the lives of his soldiers and chose to ignore lingering uncertainties. A day had passed since the imperial invasion of the labyrinth began. The soldiers marched continuously, day and night, and by now, around 350,000 soldiers were inside. Like clockwork, every 1,000 soldiers entering the labyrinth were transported to different locations. The treasure they brought back varied, and nearly all of it was of high quality. Some weapons had strange concave holes, indicating potential new enemy weapons. The enemy's panic was evident. The scattered treasures suggested they had hurriedly left them behind. Caligulio saw this as a sign of their disorganization and failure to handle the invasion effectively. Using the labyrinth to attract people was a clever strategy, but failing at this crucial moment made the enemy seem poorly prepared. Initially derisive of the Demon Lord Rimuru and his team, Caligulio decided to halt the invasion and observe. The soldiers at HQ were allowed to rest in shifts. Though they could have continued, Caligulio felt uneasy. Then reports confirmed that contact with the soldiers inside the labyrinth was re-established, showing they had made contact with those who entered first. This news relieved the anxious troops and energized the invasion force. With half of the army now inside, they felt more confident. However, despite hundreds of thousands of soldiers inside, they had not fully explored the labyrinth. The vastness of the labyrinth surprised even Caligulio, who thought it contained 60 floors with shrinking sizes as they descended. They anticipated reaching the lowest depth soon. The plan had been for the Imperial army to conquer the labyrinth swiftly, but things had not gone as expected. With the invasion temporarily halted, contact with the soldiers already inside was lost. The halted treasure caravan further complicated matters, and the realization set in that no one who entered had emerged. The labyrinth demanded to be fully beaten before anyone could leave. This required defeating the Guardians, defending 10 keys before confronting the labyrinth's king, likely Rimuru. Caligulio's staff confirmed these conditions, but had yet to achieve any victories against the Guardians. Despite sending 350,000 troops, there was uncertainty about defeating the Demon Lord Rimuru. Staff officers initially hesitated, but regained confidence, believing their forces could prevail, especially with the over A-rank troops involved. They compared their situation to the Kingdom of Farmus, which had faltered due to Veldora's interference. Caligulio's unease persisted. He ordered a liaison team to establish contact with the soldiers inside the labyrinth, using all available communication methods, but none were successful. The inability to communicate left the staff officers disheartened. Determined to regain control, Caligulio decided to reorganize and resume the invasion. They needed to understand the situation within the labyrinth, as the large gate remained open and unchanging, yet all signs from inside had ceased. 2 more days had passed since the invasion began, and the situation within the labyrinth grew increasingly concerning for Caligulio. Reports had ceased, and the staff struggled to understand why. With every 1,000 soldiers transported to different locations within the labyrinth, it became challenging to maintain contact or gather intelligence. Caligulio's staff were beginning to show signs of nervousness. The vastness and unpredictability of the labyrinth had them questioning the success of their mission. The labyrinth, suspected to be part of the demon lord Rimuru's strategy. To mitigate losses and potential confusion, Caligulio decided to reduce the rate of entry to 1,000 troops per hour. This cautious approach, however, limited the flow of information and treasure. On the first day, they sent in 350,000 soldiers. The second day saw another 150,000. But on the third day, only 30,000 soldiers entered, leaving 170,000 troops at the ground level. The debate continued among the officers about whether to conserve their numbers or continue the invasion. Suggestions to extend the operational time frame by sending supply teams were met with mixed reactions. The absence of contact with Lieutenant General Gaster, Major General Farraga, and several intelligence units heightened the anxiety. Caligulio maintained that the high concentration of magicules within the labyrinth was disrupting communication, trying to keep morale from plummeting. Yet, the eerie silence and unsettling atmosphere weighed heavily on everyone. Despite having 170,000 soldiers ready, the thought that this number might not be sufficient haunted Caligulio. As doubts crept into his mind, the towering gate of the labyrinth seemed more ominous than ever. Caligulio felt the weight of his decisions, knowing that the fate of those who entered the labyrinth would soon be revealed. The fate of the Imperial soldiers who entered the labyrinth varied significantly depending on the floors they landed on. Those placed between floors 41 and 48 were relatively fortunate, encountering tough monsters ranked in the B range, but nothing insurmountable for the surgically enhanced soldiers. The soldiers, ranking at least C+ by adventurer standards, advanced quickly and orderly. Their affiliated combat teams followed closely, ensuring each passage was clear before proceeding. Setting up base points at each corner, they discovered both ascending and descending stairways within a day. Their primary mission was to kill the Demon Lord with the full force of their strength, leaving the treasure plundering for later. As they continued their descent, they encountered a sealed room marked Rest Stop. Despite their attempts, the door refused to budge, likely as indestructible as the labyrinth corridors themselves. Unable to use the rest stop, the captain decided to press on with the invasion. Reports were sent to the higher command, affirming the invasion's progress. Initially, being isolated unnerved the troops, but the captain's determination kept them focused. They soon rendezvoused with another team, benefiting from the guidance of an elementalist and a surveyor, which allowed them to progress rapidly. The magic crystals dropped by the monsters were of high quality, and the treasure chests yielded excellent rewards. Reports from soldiers who had descended to lower floors indicated that they were nearing the complete conquest of Floor 42. The halls echoed with cheers as the Empire's forces felt confident in their victory. On the second day, they completed their search of every chamber on Floor 41 and journeyed onward to Floor 42, joining up with the team they previously made contact with. There, at breakneck speed, they headed for Floor 43, and before Day 3 even began, they were just a few steps away from reaching Floor 48. It was beyond all expectation, but Floor 49 would be a much different story. Pandemonium erupted as soldiers encountered an overwhelming number of slimes. These creatures were everywhere, on the walls, floors, and even falling from the ceiling. Weapons and armor were corroded, and soldiers quickly lost stamina. The slimes, highly resistant to physical attacks and proliferating rapidly. Despite the reinforcements arriving every few hours, The troops struggled to clear the floor and make progress. It wasn't until the end of day 3 that they managed to explore the entire area, thanks to additional soldiers from higher floors joining the effort. On floor 50, they faced even greater challenges. The passage resembled a gloomy cave filled with the sounds of battle. A tempest serpent, a gigantic snake embodying darkness, blocked their path. Its armor-like scales deflected regular-grade magic and gunfire, and its poison breath had a deadly reach, preventing close combat. The soldiers considered using a Magazuka, a powerful magical weapon. Unlike spell guns that ran on magic stones, the Magazuka used charged magic from the atmosphere to fire concussive blasts. However, the Magazuka needed 2 hours to recharge, leaving the soldiers to confront the serpent with limited options. The narrow passages favored the serpent, making it difficult to navigate around the beast. The Imperial soldiers faced significant challenges with the Tempest serpents in the labyrinth. The Magazukas, powerful magical weapons, required an intense amount of energy to recharge, taking 3 hours even in the magicule-rich atmosphere. This delay was problematic, as the Tempest serpents regenerated faster than the soldiers could kill them. The Tempest serpents, marked by rings around their necks, were unique and particularly troublesome. No matter how many times they were defeated, they returned within hours, making it impossible to secure the floor permanently. The soldiers soon discovered there were at least 10 of these serpents, all dominating a uniquely constructed area that played to their strengths. Typically, the Tempest serpents served as the boss monsters of floor 40, but in this emergency, they were all deployed on floor 50. Reinforcements from the upper floors brought better arms, including more Magazukas, allowing the soldiers to subdue the serpents late into the night of the 3rd day. Following the intense battles, the Imperial army took the opportunity to reorganize their forces within the labyrinth. They evacuated the sick and injured to the upper floors and prepared to defend against any further regenerations of the monsters. Floor 51 featured a modern-looking passageway now under the Empire's control. Signs of fierce combat were everywhere, indicating the difficulty of this floor. Soldiers guarded every corner, and resting troops filled the spaces. One of the unit captains inquired about the situation from a sentry. The response highlighted the underestimated traps on this floor. The correct path was the one being guarded, and venturing outside, it was dangerous. Traps included tasteless, odorless gas that damaged eyes and throat, showers of neurotoxins, corrosive liquids, and large, vicious traps that could ensnare many at once. These chemical weapons, more advanced than anything the Empire used, added to the threat. From floor 51 onward, there were no monsters, but magicule-powered golems instead. These golems were self-repairing, making them difficult to dismantle. The injured and exhausted were resting on floor 55, where it was relatively safe to eat. The front line had reportedly reached floor 60. The story circulating sounded like a joke, but the captain listened. According to the tale, a giant humanoid weapon ruled over floor 60. It was so powerful that even an army of A-ranked warriors couldn't hope to defeat it. Made entirely of magisteel, the weapon was impervious to swords and guns and had a permanent barrier that rendered Magazukas ineffective. The Empire's forces had exhausted all options against this formidable opponent. The news that a giant golem, reportedly resembling and sounding like old Lord Ghidorah, was guarding floor 60 left the soldiers in disbelief. Despite the guards' valid complaints, the captain felt obliged to report to his superiors and seek their judgment. The captain decided to aim for floor 55 first, where they could regroup and discuss future plans. He knew his superior's response would likely be a firm agreement to continue the mission. Retreat wasn't an option in the Imperial Dictionary. Before they moved out, the guard issued a final warning about 5 special monsters in the area. These monsters, identified as a red slime, a golden skeleton, a deathly ghost, a heavy suit of living armor, and a small but powerful dragon, were unlike any they had encountered before. No one had successfully defeated them, and they had already claimed several lives. As the survivors from the upper floors took this advice to heart, they continued their descent in strict formation, unaware of the killing fields awaiting them. The labyrinth's depths held even more terrifying challenges, and the soldiers' resolve would be tested like never before. Each step deeper into the maze brought them closer to new and unknown dangers. The soldiers were thrown into despair as they failed to achieve a breakthrough on floor 70. This floor, marked by a massive gate, served as a boundary to the great citadel of death. Pushing through swarms of undead monsters, the Imperial soldiers initially advanced with confidence. The undead were challenging but manageable for the seasoned soldiers. The first 1,000 troops established a base and coordinated with others to continue the invasion. On the first day, the soldiers explored and mapped out most of the terrain between floors 61 and 69. However, floor 70 presented a significant challenge. It featured a large, hilly area with withered vegetation, resembling a battlefield with an eerie hint of death in the air. At the far end stood a massive gate made of bones, leading to a fortified city surrounded by walls. This city, occupied by the immortal undead, had no other entrances or facilities for regular life. The gates remained shut, and attempts to destroy the walls were met with swift repairs by the undead. Attacking in small numbers proved futile, so the Empire forces waited for reinforcements. On the morning of Day 2, with over 10,000 troops ready, the large gates opened soundlessly. A hideous-looking White King, Adalman the Immortal King, awaited them. His pure white bones shone as he welcomed the soldiers to Deathtopia, announcing the beginning of their grim encounter. Immediately after Adalman introduced himself, an oppressive wave rushed over the Imperial army. Adalman, the Immortal King, was accompanied by a band of unholy Death Knights and a majestic Death Dragon. This dragon, the pinnacle of undead creatures, roared with enough force to flatten the entire area and then landed just past the gate, bearing its deadly fangs. As the gates fully opened, legions of undead swarmed out. Massive armies of Death Knights, led by Death Lords, poured forth, throwing the soldiers into confusion. The Death Dragon, an A-ranked monster, required a direct attack on its soul to be defeated. Chaos erupted as the Death Dragon's zombie breath rained down, causing soldiers to fail their resistance checks and succumb to death. Those contaminated by the miasma became zombies, obeying Adalman. Even those who escaped the dragon's breath faced the relentless pursuit of Death Knights on their death horses. Within an hour, the Imperial force of 10,000 was decimated. The few survivors carried the news of the devastation back to the rest of the army, signaling the full commencement of the battle for Floor 70. The Labyrinth's challenges had reached a new level of intensity, with the Imperial soldiers facing overwhelming undead forces. From the second day onward, the Imperial army made numerous attempts to break into Floor 70. Each attempt ended in defeat, with the Death Dragon being just the beginning of their troubles. Although the Death Knights numbered only in the low thousands, they experienced no death, fatigue, or exhaustion. Their regenerative abilities and A- threat level kept them fighting, no matter how many times they were beaten down. The Death Lords commanding them were on par with the best warriors the Empire had to offer. On the other hand, Adalman, aided by the Death Paladin Alberto from the 10 Dungeon Marvels, led the undead army. Even the elite Imperial soldiers struggled against this army of immortals. On the fourth day, a colonel from the upper floors arrived with reinforcements, ready for a total war. The Empire had ways to combat undead enemies, employing holy magic and techniques similar to offering prayers to a higher being. Experts in these techniques were gathered and assigned to the units on Floor 70 to provide resistance against the dragon's miasma and effective attacks against the undead. With 70,000 soldiers in formation atop the hilly terrain, the Empire believed they had the advantage over Adalman's forces, which numbered less than 40,000. The decisive battle began, and Adalman revealed his trump card: extra skill, holy evil inversion. This skill negated the undead's weakness to holy magic, rendering the Empire's strategy ineffective. The Imperial soldiers' will was shattered by this defeat. The survivors, driven to despair, fled frantically toward the upper floors, forgetting the conditions for beating the dungeon. Their only thought was the urge to survive. The soldiers dropped off on these floors faced an unending battle against swarms of insects. The relentless onslaught of these oversized creatures kept the soldiers constantly engaged in combat. For the troops sent here on the first day of the Labyrinth invasion, the initial 24 hours were a sobering experience, though not truly terrifying. They quickly established a base in a secure passageway and began taking countermeasures. Despite their intimidating appearance and formidable strength, the individual insects were not particularly strong. Soldiers who maintained their composure realized that they could handle the threats. The continuous attacks meant an abundance of prime-quality magic crystals lighting up the faces of every soldier. Regular adventuring parties would struggle with the fatigue from continuous battles, but the Empire's skilled army managed to conquer these floors. They outnumbered the insects and worked in shifts, always keeping themselves in peak condition. The force expanded its network of bases, smoothly progressing through the floors. The only real issue was the lack of time to relax. The rewards from this insect-infested paradise were significant. Hidden rooms, caves in trees, and dark caverns housed powerful monsters and treasure chests. One soldier found a magisteel dagger adorned with gold and silver, a valuable prize that brought envy from his comrades. Although they were briefed that all recovered items were military property, smaller items like the dagger were likely to be overlooked during gear inspections. This possibility of personal gain motivated the soldiers to continue their relentless battle. Their progress through the labyrinth was marked by the constant struggle and the hope of finding more valuable treasures. By this time, the soldiers were collecting a significant amount of magic crystals. These crystals, usually rare, were abundant here, and the soldiers were thrilled at the prospect of bonuses. The same situation was reported across different floors, except for the undead-infested sections, which were harder to plunder. The insects, however, provided a high return on investment, and the treasure they uncovered was more than satisfactory. On the second day, things took a dark turn. One soldier witnessed his comrade's head suddenly rolling on the ground, blood spurting from the headless corpse. The sudden catastrophe was incomprehensible at first, but the soldier soon became the next victim. They died on floor 79, a place previously thought to be a safe zone, filled with dazzling flowers. The voice of Apito, the insect queen and boss of this floor, echoed across the area. Her beautiful voice, converted into thought waves, reached every corner, commanding her faithful servants. Apito led a swarm of army wasps, each nearly a foot long, and equipped with super senses that could track down human prey no matter how well they hid. Their small, transparent wings acted like high-frequency rotor blades, enabling them to perform irregular high-speed maneuvers. Known as the silent killers of the insect world, these wasps could sneak up on targets at the speed of sound. Even the best dynamic vision was ineffective against army wasps. Detecting them required exceeding the natural limits of the human body, with hastened thought and ultra-speed reaction being the minimum extra skills necessary to track their movements. Just one wasp was classified as an over-A disaster. In the Western nations, sighting even one army wasp would trigger a state of emergency. Authorities would immediately alert the highest military echelons, forming a posse of senior-level knights, including the Crusaders if possible. The ensuing large-scale cleanup operation involved knights using holy barriers and magic spells to weaken and slow the wasps before attempting to defeat them. Even with this strategy, casualties were expected due to the wasp's fearsome nature. Discovering more than one wasp dramatically increased the danger. Under Apito's control, the number of army wasps was overwhelming. Her command over these lethal insects added to the peril faced by anyone venturing into her domain. The number of army wasps under Apito's command easily exceeded 1,000, and they executed her orders with lethal efficiency. The soldiers, no matter their rank or skill, were no match for the speed and ferocity of these deadly insects. Even A-ranked powerhouses found themselves vulnerable if they lacked the necessary agility to react to the wasp's rapid movements. Within 10 minutes, the swarm had mercilessly slaughtered all the Imperial soldiers on the floor. The sheer speed and brutality of the attack left no room for defense or escape. The soldiers, who had initially felt confident in their abilities, were overwhelmed by the relentless onslaught. Day 1 in the labyrinth was merely a warm-up for the Imperial soldiers. Although many of their comrades had perished at the hands of powerful monsters resembling demons or ancient gods, they were not alone in their struggle. Similar tragedies were unfolding on other floors, where soldiers faced formidable enemies with no chance of victory. Floor 81 was home to herds of magical beasts, each possessing immense strength and ranking, at least a B or higher. Despite their power, these dumb brutes posed little threat to well-prepared soldiers. The troops quickly found the stairs and met up with the 1,000-strong force on Floor 82, feeling optimistic about their progress. However, their optimism was short-lived. On Day 2, a new adversary appeared on Floor 82, a sentient ape known as the White Monkey. This creature, with its beautiful white pelt and mastery of wind and sound, called forth mighty storms as it flew across the sky. Its combat style, a mix of martial arts and club techniques, combined with aerial killing maneuvers and vorpal blades, made it one of the most dangerous magical beasts in existence. The White Monkey's sorcery quickly brought the Imperial army to the brink of destruction. After an hour of rampage, it disappeared, promising to return. 2 days later, the regular raids from this simian menace began. Soldiers fell one after another, their pride as Imperial subjects shattered. Sniper shots were blocked by the monkey's storms, status-affecting spells were negated by its sorcery, and spell-gun-driven magic was ineffective against its wind barrier. The White Monkey's relentless attacks left the Imperial soldiers feeling like helpless children, as it would depart only to return when more troops arrived. The soldiers' resentment turned to desperation, and their numbers dwindled to less than 1,000. One soldier, contemplating his fate, saw a white figure before darkness overtook him. Floor 83 presented a seemingly serene grassland with excellent visibility. Despite the pitfalls and simple traps, the soldiers felt optimistic. However, on the night of Day 2, their situation took a dire turn. Under the full moon, the Moon Rabbit appeared, a master of gravity whose attacks spared no one. Its power varied with the moon phase, but even at a new moon, it could overturn heaven and earth. The Imperial army was now at the mercy of this supergravitational force. As night approached again, they faced the prospect of the full moon, when the Moon Rabbit's power would be at its peak. Floor 84 was an intricate maze of cobblestone alleyways, where soldiers walked with pale faces. They were plagued by an uncontrollable thirst due to the Empire's reliance on magic to create drinking water. Unfortunately, the air on this floor contained a toxin that made it impossible to collect water magically. This was discovered on Day 3 when soldiers began falling ill. Antidote magic had no effect on the poison, leading to serious attrition among the troops. Frontline soldiers collapsed from the pain, exhibiting high fevers and black spots on their skin. Desperation set in, as the lack of medics and ineffective healing magic left them with little hope. Tiny black-furred mice, the minions of the Black Mouse and the source of the illness, scurried around unnoticed. The soldiers were too distracted by the powerful magical beasts to pay attention to these seemingly trivial creatures. The Black Mouse, the floor boss, spread a dark, foul illness through its minions. Without someone like Shinji, who had restorative skills, the trap on this floor remained active. Magical healing was ineffective against illness, which required different treatment methods from physical injuries. Holy magic practitioners capable of curing diseases were rare and seldom served in military combat. Floor 85 was under the dominion of a royal tiger that patrolled its thick, deciduous forest. The magical beasts roaming freely on other floors were completely subjugated by this tiger. Known as the Thunder Tiger, this formidable big cat wielded control over lightning. Initially, the Empire believed they held the advantage, but the arrival of the Thunder Tiger swiftly changed the tide. The soldiers were forced onto the defensive, retreating to their base by the stairway. The forest belonged to the monsters, and despite being cornered, the soldiers fought relentlessly to maintain their foothold. The Thunder Tiger's lightning attacks were devastating, scattering the troops and disrupting their formations. The beasts, emboldened by their leader, launched coordinated attacks, further challenging the Imperial forces. Floor 86 presented a harsh desert landscape with occasional oases. The extreme temperature variations, scorching heat during the day and bone-chilling cold at night, sapped the soldiers' strength even before battle commenced. While they assumed the climate was their greatest enemy, they were only partially correct. The true danger lay in the air itself. The winged snake, ruler of this domain, had control over the air's composition. It could reduce the oxygen level to 0 effortlessly. As the soldiers struggled with the climate, they assumed they could recover with rest, unaware that the lack of oxygen would ensure a peaceful but deadly sleep. Floor 87 featured a serene mountain range, a stark contrast to the chaos of previous floors. The tranquil views reminded many soldiers of their loved ones, allowing them to reminisce about happy childhoods and dream of reuniting with their families. The low monster rates around the peaks contributed to the soldiers' relaxed state, making it hard to maintain vigilance. Within 5 days, the soldiers felt fully at ease. However, this sense of security proved to be their downfall. The guards on duty unknowingly fell asleep, only appearing awake due to hallucinations induced by the sleeping ram. This peace-loving creature used its illusory hypnosis to gently lull the soldiers into a deep sleep from which they would never awaken. The sleeping ram reaped their consciousness without shedding a drop of blood, leaving Floor 87 eerily silent. Floor 88, with its forest bordering a great river, was the domain of a fearsome bird of flames. This firebird, the master of flames, had the extraordinary ability to control its fire so that it only burned those who were hostile to it. Once it ignited, the fire would burn eternally, never fading. The firebird served as the floor boss, commanding other avian creatures under its rule. Together they quickly incinerated any invading soldiers, leaving nothing but ashes in their wake. The soldiers' attempts to conquer this floor were thwarted by the relentless and devastating power of the Firebird and its subordinates. Floor 89 presented a maze made entirely of mirrors, each surface polished to a fine sheen. The mirrors complicated the navigation for intruders, reflecting every move and creating a disorienting labyrinth. These mirrors were unbreakable, created by a secret spell cast by a single monster, the Mirror Dog. The Mirror Dog moved effortlessly among the mirrors, toying mercilessly with the Imperial soldiers. It existed within the mirrors, which had the ability to bounce all magic back to the casters. This made it nearly impossible to catch the Mirror Dog in action. As it reflected itself across more surfaces, the Mirror Dog multiplied seemingly infinitely, turning the soldiers into pitiful prey. The soldiers were unable to escape or effectively combat the Mirror Dog, leading to their inevitable downfall. At every level of the labyrinth, vicious floor bosses rampaged, each granted an environment perfectly suited to their traits, allowing them to demonstrate their abilities to the fullest. The Imperial army tried their hardest to resist, sometimes even managing to defeat these bosses, which brought cheers across the floors. However, the bosses would always come back to life, again and again, which frightened the soldiers more than anything. The situation was much the same on other floors as rumors spread. The realization of the seemingly endless battle broke the soldiers' hearts, making the fight feel utterly pointless. The most desperate among them faced the 8 legions, mystic beasts serving Kumara. These were Kumara's cherished pets: the monkey, rabbit, mouse, tiger, snake, ram, bird, and dog. Each one was a transformation born from one of Kumara's tails, their abilities granted by her. When all 8 came together, Kumara took her full form as Nine-Head Kumara, one of the world's most beautiful women and the guardian of Floor 90. Among them, a group of unfortunate soldiers approached Kumara, who saw them as nothing more than food. The death toll in the labyrinth continued to climb, and the situation grew increasingly dire. Of the 530,000 Imperial soldiers who invaded the labyrinth, none survived just a few days later. The labyrinth's horrors proved to be insurmountable, leading to a complete and tragic annihilation of the Imperial forces. A week had passed since the Imperial army began their invasion of the Labyrinth. Caligulio grew increasingly frustrated and fearful as no reports or updates arrived from the soldiers inside. Despite sending squadrons of troops, no one returned, and all communication with the Labyrinth was lost, leaving them feeling isolated and unnerved. Upon entering the Labyrinth, soldiers were informed of the conditions for victory. Defeat the 10 marvels within, collect the 10 keys, and challenge the king of the Labyrinth. Defeat the king to beat the Labyrinth. Initially confident, the soldiers soon realized they had underestimated the challenge. The Labyrinth, containing at least 50 floors, transported soldiers to different levels in turns. Contact between troops only began after over 50,000 had entered. The strength of the monsters inside was far greater than expected, with formidable creatures ruling over each floor. Monsters like the White King, initially thought to be the Labyrinth's boss, turned out to be just one of the 10 dungeon marvels. This shattered confidence in the initial intel. "Even for our finest elites, it must be a great challenge," admitted an officer. "Indeed, sir. If we don't do something, I fear this entire invasion might end in failure," another responded. The Labyrinth's overwhelming challenges pushed the Empire's invasion to the brink of collapse, testing the soldiers' resilience as they faced an increasingly dire situation. Caligulio shuddered. The thought of the mission failing and the deaths of 530,000 Imperial soldiers was unacceptable. These soldiers, granted to him by Emperor Ludora, were valuable assets. He couldn't simply abandon them. They were only 7 days into the invasion, and Caligulio believed the soldiers were still fighting inside the Labyrinth. Despite this, he and his staff felt they were headed for failure. The challenge stemmed from the 10 marvels. The Imperial soldiers had obtained 4 of the keys from the Dragon Lords, who revived repeatedly. However, the remaining 6 marvels seemed invincible. The White King and his companion, the Death Paladin, were formidable. The Insect Queen commanded magical beasts, and the attacking golem, nicknamed the Ghost of Ghidorah, added to the menace. The identity of the 10th marvel was still unknown. Caligulio and his staff agreed that defeating these 6 marvels with the current forces was impossible. They realized that even deploying all of the Empire's resources wouldn't guarantee success and would weaken their surface defenses. The only solution was to conquer the Labyrinth with a small team of elites. Then they decided to gather the best among the surface forces, recruiting 100 elite men and women. Among them was Minitz, a high-ranked major general and a trusted confidant. Caligulio entrusted him to command this operation. Beside Minitz was a man smoking a cigarette, his fearless gaze and well-kept beard instilling awe in those around him. He had the talent to meet any challenge head-on. And Colonel Kansas, a champion with numerous glorious achievements, most notably commanding the notorious Operation Mystic Sweep, maintained a dignified demeanor, exuding supreme self-confidence. Reporting directly to Minitz, who tolerated his attitude, Kansas was a revered hero within the Empire. Caligulio entrusted Kansas's handling entirely to Minitz, recognizing his value despite any personal reservations. Among the elite group of 100, Lucius and Raymond stood out. Both otherworlders, Lucius possessed the unique skill Fusionist, enabling highly explosive attacks, while Raymond's unique skill Combatant made him a first-class fighter, mastering weapons, fighting styles, and arts. The rest of the group, ranking at least an A, were exceptional talents capable of destroying Night Corps of entire nations. Caligulio entrusted this operation to these champions. He addressed the group, emphasizing the urgent need to relieve their comrades in the Labyrinth by defeating the 10 marvels and retrieving the 10 keys to challenge the Demon Lord. He knew the Labyrinth couldn't be overrun with sheer numbers and motivated his troops with an embellished speech to maintain morale. Minitz, the highest ranked among the group, responded on behalf of the division, promising complete victory. With a graceful bow, he expressed their readiness to challenge the Demon Lord, instilling confidence in their mission. But they were ignorant, and that ignorance was what kept them hopeful. They were unaware of the dangers the Labyrinth held. Now would have been the perfect time to retreat, but it was too late. Caligulio's decision had simply come too late. The battle inside the labyrinth was already over. Nobody was left alive. But not realizing any of that, the chosen heroes marched into this dreadful labyrinth in the highest of spirits. Rimuru and Benimaru took a break after watching the events unfold on the big screen. The Empire had ignored the gate's warning, sending even more soldiers into the labyrinth than expected. Rimuru expressed his amazement at how well things were going, and Benimaru agreed, noting that none of the soldiers posed a significant threat. Despite this, Benimaru remained vigilant, observing more movement from the Empire. He speculated that they were now selecting a smaller, elite group rather than relying on sheer numbers. Rimuru acknowledged that the situation had turned out well for them, but Benimaru felt uneasy about the smooth progress. Rimuru suspected that Benimaru wanted the Empire to try harder so he could join the fray. Unlike Benimaru, Rimuru was satisfied with the results so far. He reiterated that in this world, quality mattered more than quantity. The Empire's remaining troops had been thinned out to a point where the Western nations could handle them alone. Using a gambling analogy, Rimuru explained how the Empire's overconfidence led to their downfall. They had continually deployed forces into the labyrinth, pushing their army past the point of no return. For Rimuru and his allies, the mission was accomplished. Rimuru was pleased with the outcome, but noted they still hadn't found the most powerful members of the Imperial Army. There were a few strong individuals, but none that seemed like a real threat. Reflecting on his strength compared to the Rimuru in Chloe's story, he realized he hadn't become a demon lord yet and was probably at the same level as when he tied with Hinata. Rimuru didn't detect any real threats so far, even considering individuals like the guy with the legend-class weapon that Testarossa killed, or the 11th-ranked Davis. He felt that the true threat to his life had yet to appear, and pondered the enemy commander's thoughts. Normally, one would expect a retreat in such dire circumstances. Raphael suggested that the enemy commander likely lacked awareness of the current situation due to communication being cut off, clinging to a non-existent hope for victory. Raphael's brutally rational and ruthless logic emphasized that if you don't thoroughly defeat an enemy when you can, it leaves behind enmity that may return to haunt you later. Rimuru acknowledged that showing no mercy to intruders could prevent future wars. Rimuru admitted to having an indecisive streak, preferring to let the enemy take the initiative. He wished for the least amount of trouble, avoiding unnecessary conflicts. As Rimuru mused over this, Ramirez initiated a thought communication. She mentioned that another 100 or so strong individuals were coming, and the 10 Marvels had sent a couple of requests. Ghidorah, one of the 10 Marvels, knew a couple of people in this elite group, Lucius and Raymond, both otherworlders. He wanted a chance to talk with them and possibly convince them to defect to their side. Request number 2 came from Kumara. She recognized another familiar face among the enemy, a target for revenge. This individual had destroyed the Mystic Village, Kumara's home, and sold her to Clayman. Learning that this ruthless person was working for the Empire made Rimuru even more resolute in granting Kumara's request. Rimuru considered the requests. "What do you think, Benimaru?" Benimaru responded thoughtfully, "The human wave approach can lead to victory, but it's not ideal. Granting Ghidorah's wish seems reasonable. If he can persuade them to join us, it's beneficial. If not, it won't hurt much." Rimuru agreed. Spreading the enemy forces could be advantageous. Ghidorah could reach out to Lucius and Raymond. As for Kumara, Benimaru noted, no one seeking vengeance wants to be stopped. Rimuru reflected on Kumara's past under Clayman's Demon Dominate skill and felt it was natural for her to seek revenge. While revenge may not always bring fruitful outcomes, it can provide closure. Rimuru decided to allow Kumara to confront her target. Communicating with Ramirez, Rimuru approved both requests. They planned to send Lucius and Raymond to Ghidorah and the bearded man to Kumara. Rimuru wished Kumara luck in her quest for closure. He then addressed the rest of the Empire's elites. Benimaru suggested sending the commander alone to Apito. Rimuru agreed, believing it would disrupt the enemy's cohesion. Ramirez, somewhat playfully, noted Rimuru's strategic thinking. "Great idea, Rimuru. You come up with the dirtiest tactics." He, slightly taken aback by being labeled the bad guy, nevertheless focused on the strategic benefits. They decided the remaining elite soldiers would face Adalman, ensuring continued pressure on the enemy, although Ramirez seemed a bit frustrated about Dragon Lord's defeat. But the reality was that the Dragon Lords struggled against large forces. Their large arenas, filled with floor-type debuffs, were effective against small parties, but an organized army quickly countered these advantages. Despite this, Rimuru thought they performed well. 4 keys had been taken, but 6 marvels remained unbeaten, giving hope for continued resistance. Rimuru reminded Ramirez and the others not to let their guards down, knowing the Empire might have some truly dangerous individuals among their ranks. Ramirez reassured him, noting that the team was motivated, especially with Rimuru watching, and they could always rely on Master Veldora as the king of the labyrinth. Veldora's presence provided a significant advantage, ensuring their ultimate challenge was secure. With an encouraging farewell, Ramirez ended the thought communication. Rimuru turned back to the big screen. Lucius and Raymond sat on the stairway, catching their breath and drinking water. Reports suggested there were no monsters on the stairs, so they took the opportunity to rest. Being summoned by Commander Caligulio and ordered to enter the labyrinth elicited no complaints from them. Like Shinji and his band, they were other-worlders picked up by Master Ghidorah, who had provided for them when they first arrived in this world. They felt a deep sense of gratitude toward him. However, Ghidorah was now missing. He had led a special team to the territory of the Demon Lord Rimuru, returning once without his team members, claiming they had been killed in battle. Shortly afterward, Ghidorah himself vanished. Rumors suggested he had gone back to rescue his teammates, a notion that seemed unlikely to those who knew him, but they couldn't ignore the possibility. The missing team members, Shinji Tanemura, Mark Loren, and Jen Liuxing, were close friends of Lucius and Raymond. Their absence was hard to accept, but it was assumed they had died while investigating the labyrinth. Otherworlders like Lucius and Raymond felt a strong sense of solidarity, mourning the loss of their comrades. They, motivated by their debt to Ghidorah and the desire to find their friends, decided to go undercover in the campaign. They proposed the idea to Yuuki, who rejected it, citing the danger. Despite Yuuki's warning, Lucius and Raymond transferred from the Composite Division to the Armored Division without informing him, ready to join the operation as they waited for Caligulio's orders. After a while, Lucius and Raymond, sitting on the stairway, were starting to feel the weight of their decision to enter the labyrinth. Dropped into floor 59, they were initially intended for floor 60, but due to Rimuru's strategy, proposed by Raphael, they were tested thoroughly to ensure they weren't hiding their true abilities or disguising themselves as someone else. On floor 59, they faced intense combat against variable lasers, sonic cannons, and other advanced science-driven weapons. Isolation doors locked them into rooms filled with tasteless, odorless poison gas. All these weapons, crafted in the lab on floor 100, were now used to test Lucius and Raymond. The attack golems, based on materials from the puppet nation of Distav, added to the onslaught. Raymond took point, allowing Lucius to unleash his fusionist skill, which could mix materials and extract energy to unleash attacks akin to nuclear magic. Despite the overwhelming offensive, they managed to survive, defeating the golems and advanced weapons. However, the sheer number of traps made it a huge challenge, leaving Lucius exhausted. As they rested, Raymond asked, "Hey, so what now? Want to go on?" Lucius replied, "You kidding me? We've only made it down 1 flight of stairs. We need a plan for this, or else it'll be way too dangerous to take on that onslaught again." "Yeah, but we ain't got no other choice, do we? The moment we walked in, we got separated from the group, so—" Raymond trailed off, acknowledging their instinct. Raymond and Lucius knew they were in a dire situation. Continuing deeper into the labyrinth was dangerous, But turning back offered no guarantee of escape. They realized they couldn't leave until they conquered it. The thought of beating the labyrinth seemed impossible, especially with limited resources. Neither of them had undergone the Imperial augmentation surgery, so they needed regular food. They had just 2 days' worth, and without monsters to hunt, they couldn't supplement their diet. Despite these bleak conditions, they remained determined to press on. Commander Caligulio had given them a prototype revival item, a necklace meant to resurrect them if they died. Lucius and Raymond were skeptical of its effectiveness, viewing it as a rushed imitation of the original. Nonetheless, they had no choice but to rely on it. On floor 59, they faced intense combat against advanced weapons and attack golems. Raymond's combat skills and Lucius's fusionist ability helped them survive, but the sheer number of traps and enemies left them exhausted. They knew they had to rely on their own strengths, disregarding the doubtful resurrection item given to them. They stood up, ready to face the challenges ahead with sarcastic smirks on their faces. Their camaraderie and hope kept them moving forward despite the dire situation. Descending the stairs, they were startled by familiar voices. Just past the stairs, they encountered Shinji, Mark, and Zhen, the very comrades they aimed to rescue. Shocked, Lucius and Raymond froze as a familiar voice from a gigantic golem boomed out. It was Ghidorah, the mentor they owed their lives to. "Ah, it seems they might be a tad shocked. Well, allow me to ask you as well. Will you listen to what I have to say?" Overwhelmed and confused, Lucius and Raymond began to listen. The battle of persuasion was about to unfold, with Ghidorah and the others striving to explain the situation. It would take a bit more time before the two bewildered heroes understood and saw things from Ghidorah's perspective. The mission was surprisingly successful, thanks in large part to Shinji's gang, who had previously opted out of the war but volunteered for this mission. Lucius and Raymond, apprentices of Ghidorah and friends to Shinji's gang, stood out, especially Lucius with his unique skill, Fusionist. This skill allowed Lucius to transform and fuse matter, creating devastating nuclear-level explosions with just a flick of a pebble. However, the timing had to be perfect to avoid injury. Raymond, his partner, showcased superb combat skills and a formidable shield that could block all frontal attacks and deflect shock waves from Lucius's explosions. Together, they made a highly effective team. Lucius and Raymond were genuine, without any mind control or disguise, genuinely seeking answers about Ghidorah and Shinji's gang. Their trustworthiness was evident, and it was a relief to have them on our side. To ensure their loyalty and capability, they were assigned to work under Shinji's group as a training period. This precautionary measure aimed to confirm their trustworthiness before upgrading them to the same status as Shinji and the others. All was well on floor 60, but floor 70 presented its own challenges. Around 100 people had gathered in a hilly wasteland, initially confused but calmer after a day. They pitched their tents on a hilltop with a good view and sent scouts to investigate the area. Despite losing their commander, they maintained impressive composure and order, showcasing their resilience. Benimaru observed that their clear chain of command allowed them to stay organized even in difficult circumstances. This level of coordination among heroes who hadn't worked together before was remarkable. It highlighted their strength and adaptability. With their own chain of command secure under Gobwa and other capable leaders, they focused on the current situation. The army on floor 70 seemed cautious, likely searching for survivors to strengthen their ranks. However, they don't know. There were no survivors among the Imperial forces in the labyrinth. Benimaru's tone suggested he pitied them, understanding their futile efforts. Waiting for them to make a move wasn't ideal, and Shion, eager for action, agreed with the casual suggestion to have Adelman attack them. She was restless, wanting to join the battle outside while still fulfilling her duty to guard Rimuru. Benimaru chuckled at Shion's reaction, acknowledging that they wouldn't learn much more by simply watching the Imperial forces. "Behold my grand actions, my master," Adelman declared, his excitement clear. It seemed that Shion wasn't the only one eager for a fight. Adelman and his forces were prepared and eager to maintain their streak of victories. They were ready to face the Empire head-on, aiming to round things out with one final triumph. "Okay, best of luck," Rimuru encouraged. "Yes, Master," Adelman responded enthusiastically. That bit of encouragement was all he needed. Like a raging current, Adelman's army opened the gate and set off. 1 hour later, an astonishing sight greeted them. Only 3 survivors remained in the Imperial force, but only 3 survivors were left on their side as well: Adelman, Alberto, and the Death Dragon. It was now a 3-on-3 battle. The other 100 or so had fought the undead forces, killing them but losing their lives in the process. Adelman's regular army of undead would revive in 3 hours, so they assumed victory was assured by then. The enemy had some formidable fighters. Diablo and Xion were impressed, which was rare. There was a dashing sword fighter locked in combat with Alberto, a skilled wizard matching a Dalman blow for blow, and a burly warrior holding the Death Dragon at bay. The 3 were equipped with familiar-looking glowing armor, likely the same type worn by the Legend-class warrior Testarossa had killed earlier. The sword fighter and Alberto were evenly matched, exchanging powerful blows. The wizard's Legend-class armor protected them from magic of all elements, making it difficult for Adelman to gain the upper hand. Despite his holy evil inversion skill, Adelman struggled against this near-invincible opponent. The burly warrior fighting the Death Dragon seemed to have no hope of winning, but continued to battle, relying on his companions for victory. The Death Dragon's regenerative abilities made it a formidable opponent, even for someone like Sue. The warriors' behind-the-scenes efforts had prolonged the fight, proving to be a tougher adversary than anticipated. The group was keenly observing the intense battle. Rimuru asked how they thought the fight would turn out. Benimaru and Diablo both had insightful responses. Benimaru believed that while Alberto was the superior fighter, his gear disadvantage would lead to his defeat. Diablo noted that a Dalman, in his haste for victory, lacked a decisive factor. If Alberto fell, a Dalman would be quickly overwhelmed. Xion, ever optimistic, declared that there was no such thing as defeat, only victory. Rimuru, considering the possibility of losing this round, asked if it would be a problem. Benimaru reassured him, explaining that even if they did lose, the other dungeon marvels were still available. Confidently, he added that he could defeat the enemy if needed. Xion enthusiastically echoed Benimaru's confidence, assuring Rimuru not to worry. While her confidence lacked evidence, her spirit was undeniable and uplifting. Diablo, with his characteristic, emphasized that there was no need for concern. He pointed out that Zegion, Sir Veldora's disciple, was still among the marvels. With Zegion in the game, Diablo believed there was nothing to worry about, adding a rare note of praise for Zegion. Rimuru felt reassured by the confidence of his companions. As the battle on floor 70 reached its climax, the tension was palpable. Rimuru hoped Adelman's forces would find a way to win, but the Imperial Guardians had a similar determination. The dashing man, now revealed as Krishna, a 17th-ranked Imperial Guardian, shouted at Alberto, announcing himself and his companions, Reha, ranked 94th, and Bazan, ranked 35th. These impressive ranks highlighted their formidable skills. Krishna seemed even more capable than the 11th-ranked Guardian Testarossa had defeated earlier. After introducing themselves, Adelman's side rallied briefly, but Krishna's secret move shattered Alberto's cursed sword, a finely crafted weapon by Kurobi. This Legend-class blade gave Krishna a significant advantage. Krishna's strategy involved prolonged combat to weaken and ultimately destroy his opponent's weapon. With his weapon destroyed, Alberto was defeated. Adelman, though showing remarkable defensive maneuvers, was eventually overpowered. The battle turned into a 3-on-1 against the Death Dragon, which soon fell as well. Despite their defeat, Alberto and Adelman's efforts were commendable. They exposed the enemy's strategies, providing valuable intelligence for future battles. The enemy secured 2 more keys, dealing Rimuru's forces their first bitter defeat of the campaign. As they shifted their focus to the battles on floors 79 and 90, the tension heightened. Both battles seemed to be approaching their climax. On floor 79, Kumara was unleashing her fury against the bearded man who had destroyed her village and sold her to Clayman. Her quest for revenge fueled her intensity, and she was taking the fight to the extremes. Meanwhile, on floor 90, Apito was engaged in a surprisingly close match. Her strength was on par with Hinata's, though without the magic. The opponent, who looked like the commander, matched her blow for blow. His skill and charisma made him a formidable adversary, similar in strength to Krishna. Major General Minutes, clad in his luxurious, magically reinforced suit, strolled through the labyrinth. The suit, costing as much as a colonel's annual salary, exemplified his penchant for elegance. Yet, this fashion-forward officer found himself dissatisfied with his current situation. Minutes believed war should be fought with overwhelming force to avoid unnecessary sacrifices. This operation, in his eyes, was already a failure. Despite his complaints, Minutes wore a bold smile. While Kanzis often stole the spotlight, Minutes was a hero in his own right. The labyrinth's chaos did little to dampen his spirits. The danger and unpredictability of this mission made his heart race, a feeling he rarely experienced as an upper-class noble with a secure military career. Minutes' passion for battle kept him in the military. He relished the chance to fight and let loose. His current predicament only fueled his excitement. He had been transported to floor 78 just above Apito's domain to analyze his abilities. As he pressed on through the empty field, swatting away insect swarms, Minutes' disdain for bugs was evident. A single hand gesture summoned a gust of wind, turning hundreds of insects to dust. Major General Minutes possessed the unique skill oppressor, which allowed him to crush anything within his line of vision, whether organic or inorganic. This power made him undefeated in battle, easily dispatching a swarm of over-A insects on floor 78 with a single gesture. His arrogance stemmed from this overwhelming strength, making him nearly invincible. After clearing the floor, Minutes found the descending stairwell and took a leisurely break, using his expensive magical tool bag to produce a hot meal and set up a magic warding tent for a comfortable rest. The labyrinth seemed more of a minor inconvenience than a challenge to him. The following day, Minutes casually entered floor 79. It was here that he would finally encounter a worthy opponent. The army wasps, despite being known as silent killers, were no match for Minutes. His unique skill, Oppressor, made short work of them. As long as he could see his target, it was doomed. This relentless power enraged Apito, the queen herself, who decided to confront Minutes directly. Minutes' arrogance was evident as he taunted the moment he saw Apito, dismissing her as just another bug. Apito's fury only intensified as she prepared for battle. Minutes, confident in his abilities, started the fight casually, expecting Oppressor to crush Apito easily. However, he quickly realized his mistake. As Apito entered Minutes' line of sight, waves of gravitational force bore down on her. Minutes could apply this force from any direction, manipulating it to make objects explode or implode. Yet, Apito managed to evade the full brunt of his power by moving quickly, leaving behind an afterimage that Minutes shattered. Amused and intrigued, Minutes unleashed his abilities to the fullest, creating a force field around himself to block Apito's path. The queen, undeterred, kept up her rapid movements, making it difficult for Minutes to land a decisive blow. The narrow passageways of the labyrinth only added to the intensity of their clash. Both combatants held their ground, neither willing to give an inch. After extensive training from Hinata, Apito's moves were sharp and refined. She could even make the Paladin captain sweat, trying to keep up with her. However, closing the distance to Minutes for an attack proved challenging. If she paused, his pressurizing waves would immediately put her in grave danger. Realizing that retreating to her royal chamber, where she could maneuver more freely, might be her best strategy, Apito decided to lead Minutes there. She understood that there was no shame in retreating if it meant securing a win. Minutes, recognizing her retreat as strategic, cautiously gave chase, appreciating her graceful combat tactics and conserving his strength. Eventually, they arrived at a large, wide-open space with a chair atop a dais, presumably the queen's throne. Minutes accepted this as a fitting place to settle their score. Apito declared, "By my name as Apito, the insect queen, I will do my very best to entertain you here." Minutes responded, "Sounds enjoyable. I am Major General Minutes, and I am here to kill you. Ready for round 2? With that, Minutes got serious, matching Apito's speed and not falling behind. But Apito, rising high into the air, increased her speed, making it difficult for Minutes to keep up. Expecting this, Minutes unleashed his power, creating an invisible force field that descended from the dome-shaped space and trapped Apito against the ceiling. He snorted at her distress, recognizing her strength as surpassing that of ordinary monsters. "Heh, oh, does it hurt? Well, I'd like to crush you to death right now, but you're a little too strong for that. Any ordinary monster would have been easily flattened at this distance, but..." As Minutes approached Apito, the pressure intensified, easily capable of crushing even someone as tough as her. With Apito in his sights, Minutes concentrated his power solely on her, confident of a swift victory. Despite finding the fight trickier than anticipated, he believed she was ultimately no match for him. Minutes, who relished the thrill of the battle, wished to grant her a painless death as a gesture of goodwill. However, Apito was far from giving up. Despite suffering under the immense pressure, she flew back into the air, her wings torn and her body battered, but her will to fight remained unbroken. Determined to expose Minutes' skills, she vowed to give her best effort. Minutes, amused by her defiance, generated a force field around himself. Using his powers of repulsion and attraction, he aimed to keep Apito grounded. But Apito, soaring faster than Minutes could keep up with, maintained her distance, avoiding his deadly waves. The situation was frustrating for Apito, unable to find a way to attack, but she counted on Minutes' stamina eventually waning. The battle turned into a test of endurance, with both combatants pushing their limits. Would Minutes exhaust himself first, or would Apito's stamina give out? Thus the battle of endurance began. Several hours into the intense battle, Apito, armed with Hinata's training, sought an opening against Minutes. She employed poison stingers, shock waves, and summoned wasps to distract him, but his power of interference easily neutralized her efforts. Both combatants were utterly exhausted, barely able to stand. Despite her battered state, Apito defiantly declared, "With my next attack, you're going to die." Her face was bloodied, but her determination was unwavering. Minutes, his suit in tatters, responded confidently, "I look forward to that. My next blow will make all your pain go away." With little strength left, they prepared for a final attack. Apito planned to anticipate Minutes' pressure waves and change her trajectory just before they hit, aiming to land a decisive blow. Minutes, questioning how much Apito understood about his power, decided to trust in his abilities. As Minutes released his pressure waves, Apito changed direction based on her intuition. Minutes believed he had won, smiling with confidence. However, Apito's plan had always accounted for her potential death. "It's over, Queen Apito!" Minutes shouted gleefully. As she felt the invisible surge of power enveloping her body, Apito opened her mouth wide to launch her final move. This was the Queen of the Needles, a barrage of powerful poison needles created from her own body, tough enough to pierce magisteel. She believed enough of these, fired at point-blank range, could penetrate Minutes' force field. As Minutes' force compressed her body, the needles stabbed through his defensive field. The decisive moment arrived, resulting in a double knockout. Though Apito was unhappy about not securing a complete victory, she was satisfied that she had done her part. In the labyrinth, death was not the end. It allowed for resurrection. Apito disappeared from her throne room, awaiting her imminent rebirth. Once he saw Apito was gone, Minutes decided to rest quietly until his wounds healed. The attack had shattered his heart, but he was still alive. Given enough time, he knew his wounds would heal. The thrill of the intense battle had filled him with indescribable joy. Reflecting on the fight, Minutes felt an unsatisfied craving for more. He believed that only by challenging stronger opponents could he continue to grow. As if in response to his desires, a booming voice echoed across the chamber. "Excellent fighting." The voice had the timbre of a champion. "My name is Zagion. You now officially have the right to fight me. If that is what you desire, come to me." Minutes opened his eyes, guided by the voice. A dark vortex appeared before him. "Are you going to entertain me?" he thought. "If you do, then it'd be rude not to take up the offer." Despite needing healing, Minutes shot to his feet without hesitation. With no fear, he headed towards the vortex, ready to accept the invitation. Once, there was a hidden settlement known as the Mystic Village, a secret paradise where spring was everlasting. But 20 years ago, it was overrun by the Imperial Army and wiped off the map. Kumara recalled that fateful day with rage. She had been helpless, losing her mother and friends. Her mother, a powerful yet gentle mystic creature, never showed hostility toward humans. The Mystic Village, unlike the Mystic Lords who opposed humanity, was peaceful. But the Empire couldn't accept their existence and destroyed the village to showcase its might. The Mystic Village, located on the border between the Demon Lord Clayman's domain and the Eastern Empire, was thought to be safe due to a secret non-aggression treaty. However, the Empire's sudden attack left the village defenseless. Kumara's mother, the previous Ninehead, was powerful but not a fighter, and she, along with the village's warriors, was killed by the soldiers. Kumara never forgot the man responsible. "Your name is Kanzis?" "Of course I remember it. The name of the man who took my mother and everyone else's life," she spoke with vindictive determination. The bearded man with the loathsome smile was Kanzis, an enemy so hateful that killing him wouldn't bring Kumara peace. He had captured Kumara, the young child of Ninehead, and offered her to Clayman as a reward, while pocketing the village's treasure. They portrayed the Mystic Village as a threat, fabricating crimes to justify their actions and presenting themselves as heroes. Later, Clayman revealed the truth to Kumara, fueling her resentment and boosting her mystic power, which elevated her rank as a monster. As a valuable Ninehead mystic beast, she was kept by Clayman as his pet. Over the years, her grudge grew, and so did her power. Clayman even made her the thumb of his 5 top officers, the 5 Fingers. Fate took a turn when Rimuru picked her up. With him, she discovered happiness and began to heal her emotional scars through interactions with the children he cared for. Just as she found some peace, she encountered Kanzis once more. "I'll kill you. I will use every bit of my might to kill you where you stand," Kumara whispered, filled with resolve, as she awaited Kanzis's arrival. Colonel Kanzis didn't seem fazed by being thrown into the middle of nowhere. A self-made career military officer, he embodied the Empire's meritocracy, rising to his rank through sheer force. He never hesitated to engage in evil deeds if they served his ambition. To him, the Mystic Village affair was a legitimate move to strengthen his position, seeing his actions as necessary evil without feeling guilt. Despite his lack of conscience, Kanzis's abilities were undeniable. He could easily rank among the top 100 in the Imperial Guardians, but had no interest in joining them, prioritizing his own interests over loyalty to Emperor Ludora. His true loyalty lay with Major General Minutes, his mentor and equal in skill, who scouted him and pushed him to the top. Kanzis's goal was to elevate Minutes to the upper echelons of the military and take control while serving under him. Seeing the invasion as a perfect opportunity, Kanzis aimed to rescue the soldiers stranded in the labyrinth and win their loyalty, thereby increasing his faction's membership and rendering Caligulio redundant. Sneering at his superiors, he set off to search for his surviving troops. After a day, Kanzis sensed something was amiss. The labyrinth's eerie silence, with no humans or monsters in sight, made him anxious. His predict danger skill detected nothing, adding to his unease. "Seems like they're trying to catch me off guard. Maybe they're concentrating their forces somewhere," he thought. Kanzis's insight was impeccable. He was exactly right. Laughing, he welcomed the challenge. "Well, I'm glad to be receiving such a royal welcome. In that case, allow me to bask in it then." Kansas's boldness was his greatest asset. He sprinted ahead, making a beeline for the descending stairs, confident he could handle any trap. His speed left the wind trailing behind him, with each stride propelling him several yards forward. In no time he reached the stairs. A few hours later, Kansas arrived at the gates of a vast mansion, an opulent structure designed to intimidate visitors. Without a sound, the gates opened, signaling the start of the battle. Kumara, with her courtesan-like beauty, greeted Kansas with a ghastly grin. The tension between them was palpable, creating electric surges in the air. She remembered him well, the man who played a pivotal role in her mother's demise. Kansas, unfazed, recognized Kumara immediately. "How could I ever forget? Your mother played an instrumental part in my rise to fame." He taunted her, reminding her of the painful past. Infuriated, Kumara's rage intensified, and she summoned the White Monkey, who attacked Kansas with a flurry of strikes. Kansas, however, summoned the Dark Ape, a familiar creature from Kumara's past, now turned against her. The Dark Ape, once a kind beast, had no memory of Kumara and attacked the White Monkey mercilessly. Realizing that Kansas had no intention of taking her seriously, Kumara called upon more of her allies. The Moon Rabbit and the Black Mouse joined the fray, momentarily shifting the balance in her favor. Yet Kansas remained confident and continued to mock her, lighting a cigarette and observing the battle with amusement. Kansas summoned mystic creatures to match Kumara's, surprising her. He mocked her, praising her apparent training while dismissing her abilities. Confident in his strength, Kansas added more creatures, bringing forth the Dark Tiger and the Dark Snake, loyal bodyguards of Kumara's mother, now twisted into maniacal forms. Kansas, arrogant and sure of his victory, offered Kumara a chance to switch allegiance. Furious, Kumara unleashed all her tail beasts at once, summoning 8 in total: the Thunder Tiger, Winged Snake, Sleeping Ram, Firebird, and Mirror Dog. Kansas was briefly alarmed, but quickly regained his composure, still confident in his strength advantage. The battle of 8 against 5 began. Despite Kumara's numerical advantage, Kansas's creatures had unparalleled magicule energy and experience, having served her mother for years. The White Monkey and its allies were strong. As time went on, Kumara's beasts began to be pushed back, but she didn't give up. Carefully observing Kansas, she noticed that while his summoned magic beasts had lost their memories, they retained their sense of reason and followed his instructions. Kumara realized that defeating Kansas, their commander, might give her a chance to win. She had one more trick up her sleeve. If she brought all 8 tail beasts back to herself, she could take her true form, which she believed would give her an edge over Kansas and his team. Kansas, despite appearing confident, was actually nearing his limits. His secret power, the unique skill Looter, required him to build on something. He discovered this skill as a child when he killed his friend's pet dog and was able to summon a dark incarnation of the dog. The true value of Looter lay in its ability to summon darkness as powerful as the victims he killed. However, this skill had its limits, as Kansas could only tap into the dark powers of the greatest adversary he ever defeated. The more he killed, the stronger he got, but there was only so much darkness he could handle summoning at once. Kumara accurately guessed that Kansas was reaching his limit. Despite her current disadvantage, she remained confident. She confronted Kansas, stating, "Now I can tell. You've reached your limit, haven't you?" Kansas replied, "And what if I have? I don't know how you've taken control of the Dark Ape and the rest, but that's not an issue. I'm going to kill you anyway," Kumara declared, her resolve. Kumara's band of servants were evenly matched in strength with Kansas's dark creatures. Neither commander was directly engaged in the fray, but Kumara realized that if she took on Kansas directly, he wouldn't be able to give orders to his beasts. In terms of magicule energy, Kumara far outclassed him. Kumara disappeared and instantly reappeared behind Kansas, swiping at him with her claws. Kansas reacted in time, acknowledging her growth, but maintaining his detached attitude. He revealed his Looter skill's final trick, summoning a large dark fox spirit with 5 thick tails and 4 thinner ones. Kumara's mother, now under his command. Kumara's mother, once a gentle and merciful spirit, was now a dark, ominous figure. Kanzis taunted Kumara, claiming he would put her mother's powers to good use. The dark Ninehead flared with rage at Kumara, viewing her only as an enemy. The dark Ninehead attacked Kumara's team with immense force, seriously injuring the winged snake and mirror dog, who returned to Kumara in tail form. Kanzis rejoiced, confident in his power and victory. He saw no possibility of defeat with Ninehead and his augmented body. In his mind, Kumara was just a little fox, no match for him. He considered even Clayman beneath him, planning to surpass his former ally before Rimuru had intervened. The prospect of controlling Kumara with her 8 tail beasts filled him with excitement. Determined to kill Kumara and absorb her power, Kanzis prepared to attack. He believed that with her power added to his own, no one, not even Rimuru, could stand against him. Fueled by this thought, Kanzis launched his assault, eager to seize his ultimate victory. But Kumara, only standing still, shook her head and muttered to herself, recalling Lady Hinata's lesson about keeping calm. Observing Kanzis and his beast approaching, she ordered her tail beasts to fall back. They vanished into balls of light, absorbed into her. Her 9 tails began to glow with a mesmerizing radiance. Despite the imminent threat, Kumara remained composed. Kumara, though her tail beasts were inexperienced, had honed her own skills under an excellent teacher and supportive friends. She gently stopped the sharpened claws and knife, approaching her with both hands, shocking Kanzis. "I haven't given you my name yet, have I? I am Kumara, Ninehead Kumara," she declared. The claws shattered, the knife snapped in 2. Kanzis recoiled as Kumara smiled bewitchingly. "I was going to give you a slow and gruesome death, but that would be too much for us to bear. So..." Before she could finish, the dark beast crumbled to pieces. Kumara's hands had torn the previous Ninehead limb from limb. Kanzis yelped in astonishment as his greatest tool vanished before his eyes. The looter skill could no longer summon the beast once it was destroyed. Kumara had taken back what was rightfully hers. "If I was stronger, perhaps we could have tormented you more, but alas, it ends here," Kumara stated calmly. "Well, wait," Kanzis pleaded, but Kumara had no patience for his nonsense. "Farewell." Kumara's 9-tail slash ripped through Kanzis from all directions, killing him instantly. Kumara, with her ravishing beauty and ruthless will, understood that death was irreversible. She had no lingering regrets, only the determination to protect what was left. The mystic village was gone, but Kumara had found a new home. She had avenged her mother and regained her dignity. Kumara smiled, satisfied with her victory. Someone was quietly meditating. A streak of gold ran across his jet-black exoskeleton. A sword-like horn extending out of the center of his forehead shone a ruby red. The crimson compound eyes underneath it never shut. They continually took in information from his surroundings, processing it in his brain. His exoskeleton had been modified, or rather tinkered with, by Rimuru, his master. Rimuru's own cells, along with a healthy dose of magisteel, had helped to reinforce the parts he'd lost. These enhancements felt familiar to him, as if they were always there. They possessed unparalleled performance, combining strength beyond diamonds with the flexibility of a living creature. One could call it adamantite or organic magisteel. This natural armor was easily legend class. However, his strength didn't come from the exoskeleton alone. The real essence of his power lay in his instincts, insatiable in their pursuit of battle. He was the absolute monarch of this labyrinth, Zegion, the insect Kaiser, and among the dungeon's most powerful guardians. And now a thought crossed Zegion's mind. He believed that those who confirmed their desire to be here were qualified to fight him. That was why he sent the summons, his invitation into this dark space. Anyone who reached his floor was lucky indeed, for they could die with the dignity of a human being and the pride of the world's strongest. At the bottom of the stairs leading to floor 80, there existed a room where people could rest. There was no door in the entryway. The room was wide open, in order to show there were no traps inside. And on the far end of it was a flashy, incredibly ornate door, which led to the boss chamber. The dark vortex transported Minutes to a dimly lit room, equipped with comfortable chairs, a table with fruit and beverages, and a few other necessities. He noticed a few others had arrived before him, and quickly glanced around to see if he recognized anyone. He could tell these 3 individuals were Imperial Guardians based on their abilities. Krishna, ranked 17th, Bazan, ranked 35th, and Reha, ranked 94th, confirmed his suspicion. Minutes inquired about the others, and Krishna explained that 96 individuals had been sent to battle the White King, but only the 3 of them had survived. Minutes expressed disbelief and frustration, knowing the high caliber of the soldiers. This group had been tasked with rescuing the rest of the Imperial forces, and the loss of such talented individuals was a heavy blow. Krishna further described the formidable opponents they faced: an undead knight, an undead dragon, and the king of the dead. Bazan, angered by their experience, emphasized the miracle of their survival. Minutes acknowledged the danger of the labyrinth and offered full cooperation, recognizing the value of their assistance. Minutes also shared his encounter with a swarm of army wasps and their queen Magic-born. Krishna, impressed by Minutes' strength, noted the formidable nature of such foes. Observing Minutes' wounds, Reha expressed concern, but Minutes assured them he had potions and would recover with rest. Minutes maintained his leadership, guiding Krishna, Bazan, and Reha to share their knowledge. They discovered the labyrinth likely had an amorphous, transformable structure, vastly different from prior intelligence. Bazan voiced his frustration, questioning why they hadn't entered the labyrinth from the first floor. Minutes explained that the resurrection bracelets worked for both them and the monsters. This tactic allowed the labyrinth to eliminate more of their forces efficiently. Minutes recalled suggesting to Lord Caligulio that they should occupy the revival space for dead monsters, but the plan was dismissed. This misjudgment led to the deployment of over 500,000 soldiers, a decision they now regretted. When Minutes inquired about other survivors, the trio indicated they were likely the only ones left. Bazan and Krishna agreed that their only option was to retreat if they made it back to the surface. Reha reported that they had detected no poison in the food and drink, suggesting the enemy extended them a helping hand. The door, however, was immovable and displayed what appeared to be a countdown. Beyond the door on the other side of the room, an unspeakably evil presence seemed to waft through the cracks. Above the door, a number marked time, currently reading 200. This indicated the door would open in just under 3.5 hours, the exact amount of time Minutes needed to regain his full strength. Sighing wearily, Minutes realized this couldn't have been by chance. "The enemy wants us to fight when we're in tip-top shape," he remarked. "I don't know if they'll give us a fair fight, but they at least want us to heal." Reha wondered if the challenge would be taken on 1 by 1 or in pairs. Krishna noted the enemy's confidence, while Bazan called it a cocky move against a major general and the killers of a White King. Minutes suggested they take the offer and buy more time until Kanzis arrived. Krishna agreed, hoping that more forces, including Lord Kanzis, might help them find a way out of the labyrinth. Reha revealed a medallion with 10 crystals, 7 of which were glowing, signifying keys to access the king of the labyrinth. Minutes confirmed they needed to beat the 10 marvels to reach their king, with 4 keys already in their possession. Krishna explained that both the White King and his bodyguard counted as marvels, meaning if Kanzis won his battle, they would have 8 keys and at least 9 afterward. Though it was a faint hope, it was a way forward. All of them agreed that if given the chance, they would never venture back into the labyrinth. But their only option now was to push on. They rested, conserving their energy and avoiding the refreshments on the table, preferring their own energy bars to replenish their stamina. As the countdown approached 3 minutes, Minutes stood up and checked his medallion. Seeing no newly glowing crystals, his shoulders drooped. "I fear Kanzis might have lost," he said. Realizing that reinforcements were not coming, Minutes abandoned any naive expectations. Right, it's time. Let's finish up prep. The Imperial Guardians silently nodded in agreement. Each took out their pendants and chanted a short password, "Release." Torrents of light surged from the pendants, and the trio was armed and ready. Now, there were 3 Imperial Guardians alongside Major General Minutes of the Armored Division. Though they were only 4 in number, they represented the best the Empire had. So the fateful moment arrived. The countdown progressed all the way down to 0, and when it did, the door before them opened. Everyone was ready for this. Without further hesitation, they went through the doorway, throwing themselves into the all-or-nothing battle for survival. Beyond the door lay profound darkness. Reha illuminated their surroundings with elemental magic, revealing a wasteland piled with corpses. At the top, Zegion sat cross-legged, floating above the ground. "Welcome, brave fellows," Zegion said, his voice low but clear, filling the space with an overpowering presence. Minutes, mistaking Zegion for Rimuru, asked if he was the Demon Lord. Upon hearing that, he suddenly enraged. "You dare mistake the likes of myself for Sir Rimuru, the greatest of Demon Lords," and corrected him, stating he was one of the 10 dungeon marvels. Zegion's scathing rejection filled the room with rage.